Chapter 652. Gong Dai urged his horse forward. Sure enough, he was stopped just like Gong Yimo. The guards saw Gong Dai and his group. Although they were few in number, they were all cold and solemn. The man in the lead was even colder. With one look, one could tell that he was not an ordinary person, so the guard asked awkwardly. "May I ask who you are?" Lo Chi was about to answer when Gong Dai waved his hand to stop him. Gong Dai. Gong Dai reported his name. At this moment, he was high and mighty, looking down at the guards below. He used an extremely cold tone to order. "Call your king to come out and meet me." Gong Dai's words were very arrogant. Those who did not know would think that he was here to cause trouble. However, Gong Dai's aura was very oppressive. The guard swallowed his saliva and went to report without saying a word. Gong Dai originally thought that after meeting the Lian Kingdom's king, he would force him to help him find his daughter. He did not expect that his appearance would cause the entire Lian Kingdom to be in chaos. When Shuolian heard the report, she, who was decorating the wedding hall, accidentally smashed the dragon phoenix candle in her hand. "The regent is here. Why is he here? Could it be that Immerse had leaked their tracks last time? No, if that was the case, the regent would not have come only today." The only explanation was that he had not given up on finding Immerse. He was here to find Immerse. Fuya quickly comforted her. "It's fine. Didn't you hear that he only brought a few people? Maybe he's only here to find someone and not to find us." Shuolian nodded. She was still a little worried. Rumor has it that the regent is very meticulous. "I'm just afraid that he'll find some clues." Fuya was actually worried about this too, but he still said, "Different situations call for different actions. There's always a way out." After Shuolian calmed down, she ordered that no one was to reveal hostility or reveal their surnames to the regent. Then she went to Immerse's place. She wanted to hide her daughter. Fuya personally went to welcome Gong Dai in with a good attitude. Just like the kings of other small countries, he was very respectful to Gong Dai. Gong Dai rode his horse into the city and walked slowly on the main road. He keenly noticed that the commoners here seemed to be a little different. They all seemed to be minding their own business, but inadvertently, some of them were looking at him evasively, as if he was some kind of man-eating monster. When Fuya saw this, he couldn't help but explain, "Your Highness must be joking. In the past, when the villagers heard of your Highness's fame, they were all timid, let alone seeing the real person." Gong Dai didn't answer. His sharp eyes swept across the room, and he memorized all the oddities. He said casually, "Your construction here is pretty good." When Fuya heard this, he hurriedly raised his spirits and replied, "Your Highness is too kind. It's just an ordinary town." The two of them went back and forth, seemingly happy and harmonious. Little did they know that Fuya's back was completely soaked with cold sweat. His whole body was tense. Obviously, the other party was only a teenager, but the pressure he gave off was too heavy. Fuya couldn't help but move a little further away from him, so that he could breathe more smoothly. Gong Dai pretended not to notice his small movements and stated his purpose. "This princess consort got lost in this area. I wonder if City Lord has taken in any citizens of other countries recently." He paused, his thin lips moving. "There is also a guard, 2 people." Those clear black and white eyes quietly stared at Fuya, as if to prevent him from lying. But Fuya was still a man in his 40s. Under his forceful gaze, he could still be considered calm. Definitely not. To be honest, because this town is too small, there are more and more people. So since last year, Lian country has not allowed outsiders to enter, not even for a night's rest. Gong Dai saw that there were quite a lot of people around, so he believed Fuya's words a little. However, this prince still needs City Lord's help. If there is news of the princess consort, this prince will not treat city lord unfairly. Fuya smiled, that's right, that's right. If I see someone suspicious, this prince will definitely inform you immediately. Gong Dai nodded, his attitude casual as he looked around. In fact, he was a little suspicious of Fuya. Even if he disguised himself very well, what kind of person was Gong Dai? Even the slightest movement could not escape his eyes. He could feel that Fuya was nervous, and this kind of nervousness was different from the reverence of others. The people of this city were also strange. Every time their gazes fell on him, they would quickly move away, as if they knew who he was. This city had a secret. After coming to this conclusion, Gong Dai, who had originally planned to walk around and leave, made a request to have a meal here. Fuya was surprised, but he naturally agreed with a smile. However, in his heart, he was inwardly annoyed. He was afraid that the regent would stay here for too long. When they arrived at the palace, Gong Dai was a little dazed as he looked at the sea of red. It seems that this prince came at the wrong time. Gong Dai said ambiguously. Staring at the red, he felt that it was dazzling for no reason. Fuya hurriedly smiled apologetically, Your Highness must be joking. Your visit brings light to Lian country's humble dwelling. As for these wedding cloths, it's like this prince's daughter is going to get married in a few days. Gong Dai naturally did not say that he wanted to drink the wedding wine. A small Lian country did not have the qualifications to do so. However, when he felt that the palace servants around him were even more frightened and careful than the people outside, Gong Dai frowned. Even if they tried to hide it, who was Gong Dai? He might not be able to sense other things, but he was already extremely familiar with the fear others had towards him. The only reason why everyone in this city was afraid of him was because of his identity as the regent. The royal sister might not be here, but this city was not simple. Gong Dai drank a mouthful of wine with waning interest. He did not have much interest. At this time, other than the royal sister, he did not have the desire to find out any secrets. Therefore, even if he felt that something was wrong, he did not say anything. When Gong Ju saw Fuya sitting in front of him with a stiff smile, he couldn't help but ask. Oh. Your daughter. Where is she? On the other side, Gong Yimo was almost on fire. When she thought that the person who raped her a few days ago had come to find her, she wished she could turn into a butterfly and fly away. Shulian was relatively calm, Don't panic, I will use the secret passage to send you out of the city. Then what about you? Gong Yimo was a little worried about them. Seeing that Gong Yimo was subconsciously concerned about her, Shulian could not help but laugh. It's okay, it's okay. Before Qiu Xingfeng could figure out the situation, Shulian had already stuffed him and Gong Yimo into the secret passage. There was a secret passage here. Gong Yimo looked at the passage in front of her with some difficulty. Why did she have a very uneasy feeling? If the regent found out that this was the nest of the Snow clan, wouldn't there be a fight? If the regent wanted to kill the Snow clan, they would not be able to escape even if they dug a passage. Gong Yimo sighed and pulled Qiu Xingfeng to the other exit. On the way, Gong Yimo suddenly asked. Master, you said that the regent killed the Snow clan because of me. Because she killed the woman he loved, it was not enough that the regent wanted to kill her, but also the entire Snow clan? No, it was too cruel. She felt that before she lost her memory, every day must have been very painful. Chapter 653. Qiu Xingfeng thought for a while, it should be. Thinking of how she fell into the water with wounds all over her body on her wedding day, and Xue Qianzhong who went to give her gifts, he felt that all of this must have something to do with the Xue clan. Therefore, Gong Dai must have killed the Xue clan because of Momo. Gong Yimo's face fell instantly, then am I not a sinner? Qiu Xingfeng thought that it was not right. Gong Dai was avenging her, but didn't they meet last time? Gong Dai even bullied her, why would he kill? Don't worry, it may not be just because of you. Really? Qiu Xingfeng touched her hair and said with certainty, some of the Shui clan must have done something bad to be like this. Hearing his comfort, Gong Yimo felt much better. Gong Emo didn't like to think too much because she only had memories of the past 10 years. In those 10 years, she lived with Qiu Xingfeng, a simple person. Gong Emo didn't like to think too much. In the tunnel, she glanced at Qiu Xingfeng with the help of the firelight. His smile was clean and pure, especially relaxing. If she did not search for her memories and simply married him like this, it seemed not bad. What did it matter if she liked him or not? He was her family, and also the father of her child. I hope he will not kill the Shui clan in the future. I feel that the people in Lien are quite good. When the time comes, let's stay here. When the child is a little older and calms down, we will go out and travel the world. At this time, this girl still did not forget her dream of traveling the world. Okay. Qiu Xingfeng agreed readily. On the other side of the cliff, there was a huge problem. For some reason, the Prince Regent was suddenly very interested in his daughter. No matter what he said, Gong Dai still went to his daughter's place. But before he entered, Shuolian walked out. When Shuolian left, Gong Dai was only 4 years old. She was not afraid that he would recognize her. She looked at this man unkindly. He bullied her daughter, why did he come looking for her? Men, all of them were bad. So this is the famous Prince Regent, I have heard of you for a long time. Shuolian stood in front of the door and bowed. Ah. Your Highness, this is the young Madam Wang. Fuya walked in between the two and introduced. Gong Dai glanced at this woman. For some reason, he felt that she looked familiar. But he did not think too much and prepared to walk in. But for some reason, he suddenly wanted to see the princess who was getting married. Shuolian hurriedly stopped him. Your Highness, what are you doing? My daughter is bathing. Bathing in the middle of the day. Gong Ju raised his eyebrows slightly. The faint pressure he exuded made Shuolian quite uncomfortable. She cursed in her heart. She didn't know how Gong Ju grew up. He was only 17 or 18 years old, but his deterrence was so strong. Can't. Shuolian, she glared at Wang. It was said that a mother had to be strong. She was not a weak woman to begin with, let alone facing someone who bullied her daughter. Xing Shuolian's. When? Shuolian couldn't figure out what he was thinking, but she still said it. Very good. Gong Dai lifted his clothes. In 7 days, this prince will come for a cup of wine. Today, I will take my leave. Fuya was happy, but he still pretended to be in a difficult position. Are you not going to eat before leaving? No need. Gong Dai turned around and left the palace with his people. The entire Lien kingdom was strange. He could not help but think of a possibility. Fuya got up to send him off. Gong Dai did not care and walked in front with his people. Lo Qi. This subordinate is here. Lo Qi quickly stepped forward to listen to Gong Dai's orders. Why do you think the whole country is so afraid of the Prince Regent? Gong Dai smiled, revealing his white teeth. Is this prince very scary? Lo Qi's face was stiff. Naturally, no one could see his inner approval. It is strange. Could it be that they are harboring criminals? When Lo Qi said this, he turned back to look at Fuya. Fuya was smiling kindly. He did not look like a bad person. Gong Dai unconsciously stopped smiling. Harboring criminals. Maybe the whole country is filled with criminals. Lo Qi was surprised. For a moment, he did not understand what the prince meant. Gong Dai thought about how the 4 countries were killing the Snow Clan. Gradually, the number of Snow Clan members was decreasing. He wondered if someone was helping them find a place to hide. And this Lien kingdom was in the middle of the 3 countries. It was not a vassal state of any country. The more he looked, the more suspicious he felt. He thought that he might have found a shortcut to exterminating the Snow Clan. Gong Dai's lips curled. Killing intent flashed. Snow Clan. Since they are not willing to be assimilated, then they can die. As long as he thought of the suffering his royal sister had suffered, he could not wait to kill all the Snow Clan members. Luo Qi couldn't bear the cold aura that suddenly appeared on his body, and retreated a little further. Finally, the group arrived at the city gate. Seeing that Gong Dai had really left, Shui Lian and Fu Ye were relieved. Shui Lian was about to call Gong Yimo back, but Fu Ye said to wait. He felt that in the morning, the regent looked at him with some suspicion. It was better to be safe. He did not expect that the army would suddenly arrive at night. What's going on? The regent is here. The regent found us. Lien Kingdom was in chaos. Even Shui Lian could not believe it. How is it possible? I clearly gave the order. The regent did not contact any of our people. How did he find out our identity? We were careless. Fu Ye did not know why Gong Dai suspected them. But now that the enemy's army was here, they would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. Then what should we do? Shui Lian frowned. She lost her sense of propriety. Don't panic. I will go and see what's going on. Maybe there will be a turn for the better. Gong Dai sat on the horse and looked at the closed city gate. He did not want to give the other side a chance to breathe. He waved his hand and said softly, "Break the gate." Shui Lian and Fu Ye heard the terrible sound of the gate being hit. They gritted their teeth and said, "How can this person be so overbearing?" He did not even ask clearly before attacking. Is he not afraid of killing the innocent? Fu Ye wanted to say that the regent would not be afraid. Even if he killed the wrong person, no one would dare to say anything. Speaking of which, this was the fault of the Shui clan. But all of the Shui clan had to bear it. Open the city gate. The appearance of Fu Ye calmed the panicking Snow clan members down. They no longer blocked the city gate but opened it. When the gate was opened, the 2 sides faced each other. Fu Ye forced a smile and looked at the imposing young man on the other side. He sighed in his heart. I wonder why your highness has come so late at night. In the light, Gong Dai only narrowed his eyes. That deterrent aura made the Shui clan behind Fu Ye tremble. Since you have appeared, this king will give you a chance. His thin lips slightly curved. A chance to prove that you are not the remaining evil of the Shui clan. Chapter 654. Prove they weren't from the Snow clan. Fu Ye glanced at Shui Lian and found her expression was ugly. But in the face of life and death, some principles should be put aside. He smiled slowly. Your highness must be joking. We aren't from the Snow clan. Why do we need to prove it? But he didn't know that Gong Dai had come prepared. He took out a piece of parchment from his chest. Under the light of the fire, Shui Lian's pupils shrank when she saw what he was holding. It was a treasure map of the Snow clan. Only the blood of a Snow clan member could make the patterns appear. Didn't she give it to the Emperor of Daiyu State? Why was it here? It's very simple. Just drip a drop of blood on it. Gong Ju said quietly, while Fu Ye breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't from the Snow clan. Back then, he had created the Lotus Country for the Snow Lotus Country. If he used his blood, it wouldn't be a problem, but he wouldn't show it so easily. Therefore, he frowned. Your Highness, don't you think it's a bit too much to come here in the middle of the night and ask me to do such a thing? Gong Dai sat high on his horse, looking down at him with a cold smile. Too much. His deep, inky eyes swept over the people behind Fuya. The Shui clan harmed this prince's father and brother, and also harmed this prince's wife and children. What's wrong with this prince returning the favor? The coldness in his eyes could freeze 1,000 miles. If you don't have the ability, you shouldn't have done such a thing. The Snow clan asked for it. You. Shui Lian glared at him. She wanted to say something, but Fuya stopped her. As long as we prove we aren't from the Snow clan, will your Highness leave? Gong Dai tilted his head. In the light of the fire, he sneered. It depends on my mood. Fuya gritted his teeth. But his status was inferior, so he could only accept it. All right, I'll do it myself. Saying so, he cut his index finger and stepped forward. Lo Chi took the parchment and walked over. A drop of blood fell on the parchment. It didn't melt. Fuya sighed in relief. He looked up at Gong Dai seriously. Your Highness, can you let me off this time? Gong Dai glanced at the parchment. In the darkness, he couldn't see his expression. At this moment, no one said anything. They were afraid that the more they spoke, the more mistakes they would make. Gong Dai calmly looked at the parchment and then looked at Fuya. You did, but what about your wife? Let's go together. The bad premonition in Fuya's heart had come true and his face sank. If you want to condemn someone, you can always accuse them. Regent, don't go too far. However, it was completely useless. Gong Dai was not fooled at all, nor was he provoked by him. With a wave of his hand, everyone behind him unsheathed their swords. The torches in their hands formed a sea of fire in the forest. The swords in their hands reflected the light of the fire, giving off an indescribable sense of desolation. Fuya took a few steps back. He didn't expect Gong Dai to be so difficult to deal with. He was young, but he wouldn't be influenced or provoked. In his eyes, there was only calmness and coldness. Seeing Gong Dai's people unsheathing their swords, the people behind Fuya trembled. Most of them were ordinary people who had just arrived in Lian Kingdom. They couldn't compare to the regular army that Gong Dai had brought. Shui Lian was also a little scared. She hid behind Fuya and stared at Lo Chi vigilantly. Lo Chi lived up to her expectations and took a step forward. The air was filled with murderous intent and boundless coldness. In this tense atmosphere, Gong Dai's smiling voice made people's scalps tingle. Queen Lian. This prince will also give you a chance. Do you want to test or not? Shui Lian's heart was in turmoil. Gong Dai seemed to be deliberately teasing them. No, he was doing it on purpose. Perhaps he had already ascertained their identities and was only forcing them to do so. He was just watching their final struggle. But if she refused, it would be difficult for Lian Kingdom to escape a bloodbath tonight. Speaking of which, she still had a grudge against Gong Dai. If Gong Dai knew her identity, she still had a chance to divert his attention. Under Gong Dai's cold and mocking gaze, Shui Lian looked at Lo Chi stiffly. Just as she decided to expose herself and protect her people, a beautiful spark suddenly exploded in the sky. Signal fireworks would not attract Gong Dai's attention. After all, some people would do this when they reported. But this firework was different. Gong Dai was sitting on a horse. But his whole body was trembling slightly. This firework was made by him and he personally handed it to Royal Sister. He saw with his own eyes that she kept it in her space. It was Royal Sister, it was actually Royal Sister. At that moment, Gong Dai no longer had the mind to care about these people in front of him. Whether they were from the Snow clan or not, it was not as important as a strand of hair from royal sister. He looked deeply at the people from the Snow clan, and then without saying a word, he rushed in the direction of the firework. He forced himself to calmly deploy his troops. The firework was very high up, like a mountain. Gong Dai was glad that he brought so many people with him. He quickly ordered them to go in that direction, and then blocked all the exits at the foot of the mountain. The terrain was getting higher and higher, and Gong Dai found that this mountain was much higher than he thought. Lo Chi. Take the rest of the people and block all the exits within 100 miles. Originally, there was no need to do this, but Gong Dai always felt that royal sister was cunning. It was better to be prepared. Yes. Your Highness. Luo Qi quickly took his men to Gong Ju's command. Soon, Gong Ju was the only one left running up the mountain. The eagerness in Luo Qi's eyes grew heavier and heavier. Royal sister. It's me. Wait for me. He did not have time to think about why Gong Yimo would set off the firework, but he knew that she was alive. She was very close to him. Momo, is this a good idea? Qiu Xingfeng saw that Gong Yimo was going to cut the pontoon bridge. He felt that it was not easy to build a bridge on such a long cliff. If they cut it down, those mountain people who were picking herbs would have a hard time. Gong Yimo also hesitated, but she scratched her head and shouted impatiently. There's no other way. Although I don't know if he will come, it's better to be prepared. Qiu Xingfeng said in confusion, if he really comes, I can't beat him, but I can take you away. Gong Yimo looked at her master with sympathy. Master, I'm very sorry to tell you that last time I found out that this Prince Regent is more powerful than you. Much more powerful. Gong Yimo silently swallowed the last two words. Qiu Xingfeng widened his eyes, and then said sadly. I've been training very hard every day, Gong Yimo quickly comforted him. Don't worry, Master, this is definitely not your problem. It's that guy who is too evil. Yes, he is not human. Gong Yimo clenched her claws and said firmly. Qiu Xingfeng was cured, as long as his little disciple did not despise him. Then, you cut it down, Qiu Xingfeng thought for a while. He could help them fix the bridge next time, but if they were caught by Gong Dai, they might be dead. Woo, the outside world was so scary. Chapter 655. Gong Yimo nodded and cut the pontoon bridge. The pontoon bridge was too long. It spanned across two cliffs like a bridge. After it was cut, it fell. Gong Yimo looked down with the help of the moonlight. She couldn't see the bottom and couldn't help but feel a little scared. All right, now that the fireworks had been set off and the bridge had been cut, the next step was to see if the other party would take the bait. Momo, is this going to work? Gong Yimo wasn't sure either. Let's just make a Hail Mary effort. His main goal should be to catch me. If he finds out that I might be here, maybe he will come. This was completely a gamble of luck. Let's see if the Lien Kingdom has such luck. The two of them sat on the edge of the cliff in silence. Gong Yimo was on the mountain when she saw many fireworks suddenly appear at the foot of the mountain. They formed a long line and rushed towards the Lien Kingdom. She knew that Gong Dai had come. She didn't dare to rush forward and die, so she could only think of this method. If she couldn't lure him away, she didn't dare to think about it. She hadn't killed anyone yet. She didn't dare to imagine what it would be like to see corpses everywhere. After waiting for a while, Gong Yimo was a little anxious. Could it be that he really didn't come? There were so many people. If he came, she should be able to hear the commotion from afar. Just as she was about to set off another firework, Qiu Xingfeng suddenly pulled her. He's here. He's here. Gong Yimo instantly became nervous. She saw a person riding a horse, galloping over. Under the moonlight, his silver-gray hair seemed to be blended with the afterglow of the stars. It was especially eye-catching. Gong Dai. Gong Dai. Gong Dai was here. Gong Yimo wanted to turn around and run. But on second thought, why should she run? She didn't do anything wrong. It was Gong Dai who took advantage of the alcohol and ate her clean. She was the victim. Why should she run? And it was so far away. Even if he flew over, he wouldn't be able to come over. It was quite far. So far that Qiu Xingfeng, a martial arts practitioner, couldn't see Gong Dai's expression under the bright moonlight. He could only see him suddenly reining in his horse and stopping. Gong Dai didn't know how to describe his feelings. Royal sister. She was still alive. She was really still alive. Gong Dai's heart had never beat so fast before. At that moment, he even felt like crying tears of joy. All the fear, resentment, anger, and doubt disappeared the moment he saw her. Because he was at the 8th stage of the martial realm, he could clearly see her appearance from such a distance. That face that he yearned for day and night had not changed at all. It was still so attractive to him, making him want to hug her and kiss her, and never let go. He swore. After he carried her back, he would never let go. He would never allow her to leave his sight again. But when he came back to his senses, he realized that there was no path ahead. There was no bridge either. He hurriedly reined in his horse and looked at Gong Yimo on the other side of the cliff. His expression immediately became distorted. Damn it! There was clearly a bridge pile, but where was the bridge? Could it be? He looked at the other side in disbelief. Could it be that the royal sister had cut the bridge? Why? Gong Dai's heart ached. Could it be that she didn't want to see him? Could it be that she was so afraid of hurting him that she had to draw such a distance between them? Gong Dai held the reins tightly, wishing that he could ruthlessly rub his beloved little woman. He wanted to see what was going on in her head. Gong Yimo saw that Gong Dai was silent, so she silently encouraged herself. Then she shouted out the script that she had already prepared. Prince Regent, her voice echoed in the mountain stream, clearly reaching Gong Dai's ears. Prince Regent. Gong Dai was stunned, not understanding why the royal sister would call him that. Gong Yimo vaguely saw him looking over, but she couldn't see his expression. The fear in her heart lessened a lot. She gave herself a pep talk and continued to shout. I don't like you anymore. When she shouted, Gong Dai's heart suddenly tightened. He blankly opened his eyes wide, almost unable to believe his ears. When he came back to his senses, he was suddenly scared. Could it be that the royal sister didn't appear because she didn't like him anymore? He never thought of this possibility. How could it be? She didn't like him anymore. How could she not like him? He wouldn't allow it. He wouldn't allow it. Why didn't she like him? Could it be because Gong Dai's eyes fell on Qiu Xingfeng like lightning? Although he couldn't see Gong Dai clearly, Qiu Xingfeng was sensitive enough to feel Gong Dai's eyes. That strong murderous look seemed to make the wind in the mountain stream even colder. Gong Yimo also felt a bit cold, but she didn't notice. She put her hands around her mouth like a trumpet and continued to shout. Now I also have someone else's child. The lethality of this sentence was even worse than the previous one. Gong Dai only felt a fishy taste in his throat, almost spitting out blood. He stared at the woman with his scarlet eyes. Damn it! Did she know what she was talking about? What did she mean by having someone else's child? Where was their child? No, he had to catch her back. He had to know why she didn't like him anymore. In just 2 months, could it be that their child had died and she had someone else's child? It's impossible, it's impossible. Gong Dai's robe fluttered even though there was no wind. His eyes were red and his chest was heaving violently. He was almost driven crazy by Gong Yimo's words. Gong Yimo couldn't see. She saw that Gong Dai didn't respond, so she continued to say, I was wrong to pester you before. From now on, you can walk the open road, and I will cross the single plank bridge, okay? Wait until he was dead. Gong Dai suddenly reined the horse back. His eyes were scarlet. Obviously, he had fallen into some kind of crazy state. He wanted to let the horse run up and dive, and then jump over before the horse fell. It was such a long distance. He was simply committing suicide. But he couldn't help it. He thought that royal sister didn't want him anymore. She liked someone else and had someone else's child. This was worse than death. He couldn't wait to go down the mountain to catch her. He had to catch her now. Seeing Gong Ju suddenly move, and with a fierce expression, the man's rage soared to the sky. She could feel it from so far away. Gong Yimo suddenly panicked. He couldn't be thinking of rushing over to kill her. Wasn't that asking for death? Wait, wait, wait. Gong Yimo shouted anxiously, it's my fault to kill your beloved woman. Don't do something stupid. What do I have to do for you to let me go? Say something, big brother. Because of Hui Yin, she called him big brother very tactfully, but Gong Dai didn't have time to listen carefully. He was completely stunned. It was like a bomb that had been built up for a long time, but in the end, someone poured a basin of water on it. His smart brain suddenly couldn't understand the situation. What was going on? What did she mean by killing his beloved woman? Wasn't she his beloved woman? What did she mean by letting her go? He loved her so much, how could he hurt her? Chapter 656. Why did he feel that he couldn't understand Royal Sister's words? Reuniting after a long time, and then there was a generation gap between them. But no matter what, Gong Yimo's words miraculously stopped Gong Dai from committing suicide. He wanted to see what else this despicable woman could say. When Gong Emo saw that Gong Ju had stopped talking, she breathed a sigh of relief. She thought that she had convinced him, so she told him about the confirmed image of Shuel Yen. One sentence after another, Gong Ju almost died of anger. Prince Regent, I pestered you before and killed the woman you loved. It was my fault. But you shouldn't go around killing people of the Snow tribe just because you hate me. If revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? Now that I know I was wrong, can't you let me live on account that I'm your imperial sister? I have a child in my belly, and I'm going to get married. If you kill me now, it won't be 2 lives, but 3 lives. Then she grabbed Qiu Xingfeng and said firmly, if I die, he won't live either. It will be 3 lives. At this time, Gong Dai looked at Gong Yimo, and then at Qiu Xingfeng, who was confused. The reins in his hand finally broke into pieces. Gong Emo. Don't hold him. He was going to kill that damn man. He was going to open that little woman's brain. Was it filled with grass? Gong Dai went berserk again. That gloomy voice sounded as if he was going to hang her up and beat her. Gong Yimo was furious. She really didn't understand. She had sincerely apologized, but why did Gong Dai still not let her go? But he was obviously going crazy. If she didn't leave now, she might not be able to. For her life, she had to run. Gong Yimo. Try running. Behind her, Gong Dai's angry voice made Gong Yimo's legs weak. Her heart was beating very fast. She simply jumped onto Qiu Xingfeng's back. Go, go, go. Master, I feel that he's going to kill us. Qiu Xingfeng was also facing a formidable enemy. Gong Ju's hostility towards him could be felt from the distant cliff. If he didn't leave now, he'd be dead. Seeing Gong Yimo climb onto Qiu Xingfeng's back so intimately, Gong Dai really wanted to vomit blood. At this time, he hated himself. Why didn't he break through the 9th level? If he reached the 9th level and could walk in the air, he would definitely separate the two of them with his own hands. No. That's not the point. The point was what Royal Sister just said. She wants to get married. She wants to get married. She dared to get married. His entire body was about to explode. Damn it. That little bastard dared to get married. Gong. Mo. Gong Dai's voice came from afar. Qiu Xingfeng carried Gong Yimo and ran very fast. Gong Yimo's scalp went numb after hearing that. She quickly buried her head in her master's back like an ostrich. But thinking that he couldn't fly, she was a little relieved. But the fear in her heart didn't lessen. It was too scary. That man's aura was too scary. What kind of deep hatred did he have to be so persistent? She really did apologize in a very serious manner. Gong Yimo felt wronged. She couldn't accept the fact that she loved him before she lost her memory. This man didn't care about old feelings at all. Liking him was not worth it. Gong Yimo ran away. She actually dared to run away. Gong Dai's thin lips were tightly pursed. His eyes were about to spit fire. He rarely showed his emotions like this. But this time, Gong Yimo really wanted to anger him to death. He turned his head and rushed down the mountain. At first, he had only set up guards at the foot of his mountain. Fortunately, he had ordered Luo Qi to set up another layer of defense. As long as Luo Qi could delay them for a while, he would be able to personally capture that hateful little fellow. Damn it. Once he caught her, she would be dead meat. Seeing his prince angrily rushing down the mountain, the horse's hooves were flying, with an indomitable murderous aura. Luo Xiaoqi felt a chill from afar. When he was about to go up, Gong Dai had already rushed past him like a gust of wind. Only the prince's 2 words were left in the wind. Keep up. Luo Xiaoqi froze. Prince Qing must have disappeared. He couldn't help but shout in panic, "Prince, wait for us." Wait? Gong Dai only hated that he didn't have wings. Otherwise, he would have caught that little bastard long ago. He wanted to catch her and put her in a cage. See if she still dared to say such hateful words. He almost died because of her. Gong Yimo panicked. What should I do, master? I feel like he won't let me go. Qiu Xingfeng didn't need to say it. Qiu Xingfeng also felt it. Gong Dai's terrifying murderous aura was too scary. They didn't mean to have a child. Why did Gong Dai seem like he wanted to eat them? The two quickly fled. The mountain road was rugged and only illuminated by the moonlight. After descending the mountain, Gong Emo breathed a sigh of relief. All she had to do was find a direction to escape in, but at this time, they were unexpectedly stopped. Princess. Luo Qi looked at Gong Yimo in surprise and said in disbelief. You're really still alive. He went forward excitedly but was stopped by Qiu Xingfeng. Even Gong Yimo was frightened. She jumped down from Qiu Xingfeng's back and said quickly, Master, we have to end this quickly. Otherwise, that guy will catch up with us soon. Qiu Xingfeng nodded. They couldn't hide anymore. Otherwise, both of them would die. Luo Qi was already surprised to see the princess with the people of Yunding Mountain. What was more surprising was that the two of them were working together to attack his people. Gong Yimo couldn't help. She could only watch from the side. The moonlight was dim. She looked at the mountain road and her heart almost jumped out of her chest. What to do? She felt that Gong Dai was coming. He was coming to catch her. He was getting closer. Gong Dai was indeed coming. The distance between the two mountains was still quite far. So he gave up on the horse and jumped between the mountains using Qigong. Gong Yimo. Just you wait. Gong Yimo trembled. She felt that Gong Dai was threatening her. Lo Qi and the rest also surrounded Qiu Xingfeng. The people of Yunding Mountain were also their enemies. So Lo Qi and the rest were ready. It was hard to tell who would win. Seeing that they only surrounded her master and didn't care about her, Gong Yimo was confused. Did they think that she wasn't a threat, so they didn't care? If she didn't leave now, when would she? Gong Yimo ran. As she ran, she looked at her master in shame. It wasn't that she didn't have a sense of loyalty. She really felt a murderous aura coming through the air. Her legs were weak. If she didn't run, she would definitely die. But she didn't expect that the moment she ran, those people surrounding her master stopped fighting and chased after her. It was as if she was more of a threat than her master. Chapter 657. Gong Yimo's eyes widened, and her two legs ran even faster. But how could her speed be faster than Lo Qi and the others who were moving with Qigong? What should she do? She couldn't run anymore. She didn't want to be caught. She didn't want to die. She had a child. Gong Yimo's heart trembled at the thought of being caught and locked up in a dark dungeon where she would suffer endless torment. Suddenly, she felt like her legs were injected with unlimited power. Her martial arts came back. Qiu Xingfeng was confused. Who could explain why these people suddenly let him go and chase after his little disciple? Did they think that his little disciple was easy to bully? After he came back to his senses, he immediately chased with his sword. No, he had to protect his disciple. But suddenly, he found that his disciple's speed suddenly increased. Just like a gust of wind. Qiu Xingfeng rubbed his eyes. His disciple's martial arts came back. Gong Yimo felt that her body was so light that it was like she was flying. Wait, wasn't she at the 4th level of wind and nature? How did she become the 6th level? Could it be that she opened her Ren and Tong meridians at the critical moment and increased by 2 levels? What to do? She couldn't control her speed. Lo Qi and the others were frightened. They were about to lose the princess. If the prince knew, he would punish them severely. So he couldn't help but shout. Princess! Why are you running? Gong Yimo wanted to cry. Prince Regent wants to kill me and I'm still not running. Don't chase me. I'm pregnant. After Gong Yimo said that, Lo Qi and the others hesitated. Because of this hesitation, they fell further behind. Although they didn't know why the princess wanted to run, if they stopped, would the princess stop too? After all, with this speed, what if she hurt the little prince in her belly? As such, Luo Qi gave up and yelled, Princess, don't run. We won't chase. Gong Yimo shouted. Aw, aw, aw. I can't stop. Following that, another gust of wind blew. Qiu Xingfeng chased after him. He guessed that his little disciple had not learned how to control it yet because of the sudden recovery of his power, so he ran while shouting anxiously. Calm down. Let your qi sink into your dantian. Gradually, the voices of the two people disappeared. Lo Qi's face, which had been stiff for thousands of years, cracked. What should we do? We can't catch up at all. The princess is running too fast, one person whispered. Gong Yimo's Qigong was indeed outstanding, not to mention that she lost control of her body. Lo Qi's face darkened. I only hope that nothing will happen to little master. This kind of strenuous exercise was very harmful to the body. Lo Qi's words made everyone want to cry even more. We don't know if anything will happen to the little master, but we've lost track of the princess. We're dead meat. Lo Chi was also a little scared when he heard this. Once the prince got angry, he didn't dare to think too much. When Gong Dai finally caught up with them, he saw that his subordinates were all standing there in a daze. He was so angry that his hair stood on end. Where's the royal sister? Everyone swallowed. Lo Chi stepped forward and said, "We're useless. We lost track of her. How is that possible?" Gong Dai's eyes looked like he wanted to eat someone. The royal sister clearly needed Qiu Xingfeng to carry her down the mountain. Either there was a problem with her kung fu, or her injury hadn't healed yet. How could they not catch up? Lo Chi braced himself and said. The princess seemed to have lost all her kung fu at first, but after running for a while, her kung fu seemed to have returned. And she lost control for a while. Even Qiu Xingfeng couldn't catch up with her. What? Gong Dai suddenly grabbed Lo Chi's collar. Lost control. Is she okay? Lo Chi shook his head. We saw that the princess was not in a good state, so we didn't dare to chase her. I think that without us pressuring her, she should be fine. It's just. I don't understand why the princess ran, as if there was an evil spirit chasing after her. Lo Chi's words made Gong Dai's face turn green and purple. It was too scary. They had rarely seen His Highness reveal his emotions like this. Gong Ju thought of what Sister Gong had said to him at the edge of the cliff. Gong Ju felt his blood rushing to his head. It broke a huge tree that needed two people to hug. Everyone couldn't help but tremble and kneel down. Gong Dai only covered his forehead with a headache. It's this prince's fault, Gong Dai. Other than gritting his teeth, there was a deep powerlessness in his voice. He had always thought that the royal sister didn't appear because she couldn't control the poison in her body. She was afraid of hurting him, afraid that the tragedy on the wedding day would happen again. He didn't think that she had forgotten about him. Damn it! She dared to forget about him. And she was tricked into thinking that he wanted to kill her. She even made up a groundless story. She didn't even know that the child in her belly was his. No wonder she didn't appear when he sent out orders all over the world. Because she thought that he was looking for her. Once he thought about how she didn't remember him, how she couldn't even tell who the father of the child was, and how she was going to get married. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He wished he could choke her to wake her up. But once he thought about how she lost her memories and how it was possible that it was because she fell off the cliff. His anger that was about to explode was like a hole being pierced, leaking out with a whoosh. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't even know who the father of the child was. It was all his fault. If he had found her first, how could this have happened? Gong Dai's face that was red from anger slowly cooled down, and he even felt a bit of heartache. When he thought about how she didn't know anything, how she was heavily injured and thought that he was looking for her, in order to avoid his arrest, he didn't know how much she had suffered in the past 2 months. This was all his fault. He didn't find her first, so how could he blame her? Thinking of this, Gong Dai wished he could carry her back and love her. Just now, he saw that her face had become thinner because of morning sickness. As for her saying that she was pregnant with someone else's child, that idiot. It had only been 2 months. How could she have a miscarriage and another child when she was heavily injured? That silly girl had suffered so much that she became so timid. When Gong Dai thought about it, he felt heartache. At this time, the pitiful girl in his mouth was ordering Qiu Xingfeng around. Good wine and dishes were served as if they didn't cost money. Shui Lian saw Gong Yimo's pale face and couldn't help but feel distressed. But she wouldn't show it on her mouth. Eating so fast, are you a hungry ghost reincarnated? Gong Yimo was busy stuffing food into her mouth. How could she have time to care about her? It was Chiu Xingfeng who served her and said indulgently, Momo just recovered her martial arts and ran for half the night. It's normal that she's hungry now. As he spoke, he put the roasted suckling pig in front of Gong Yimo. Come, eat the meat. Chapter 658. Gong Yimo, whose mouth was oily, did not care about her image anymore. She ran until her internal energy was exhausted. Her insides were like a bottomless pit. She felt like she could never fill it up. She grabbed the suckling pork and ate to her heart's content. Shui Lian glared at Chiu Xingfeng. How could he be so obedient? What a coward. But that being said, wasn't this table full of delicious food prepared by her overnight? The crisis in Lotus Kingdom was resolved because of Gong Yimo, but who knew if the Prince Regent would come again? There were still many other clans in Lotus Kingdom that were not from the Snow Clan. This time, they were caught off guard by the Prince Regent. She hoped she could trick them next time. If she could not, she could only escape. Originally, seeing that the Prince Regent still cared so much about her daughter, Shui Lian could use her daughter to threaten him. But this time, her daughter took the risk to lure him away and return to Lotus Kingdom. Shui Lian felt bitter and could not bring up the idea of using her daughter anymore. Those evil Snow Clan people had harmed her daughter. Although she had lost her memories, she had still helped the Snow Clan. Moreover, from the way she had subconsciously returned to the Lotus Country, it was not difficult to see that she had already regarded this place as her home and had acknowledged her as her mother. How could a mother use her own daughter? So, from the moment Gong Yimo came back, she decided that even if she had to escape with her people and build a new shelter, she would not hurt her daughter. To be able to see her energetic and lively little face, she also felt quite satisfied. Seeing that Gong Yimo was almost done eating, Shui Lian started to talk about business. Well, I think the Prince Regent seems to have found out that this is the shelter of the Snow Clan. Shui Lian looked serious. Gong Yimo blinked and ate even slower. So, I discussed with your father to bring forward your wedding with Chiu Xingfeng. Shui Lian said naturally. She looked more and more serious. After all, if the Prince Regent really comes, we have to escape and rebuild the city. So, your wedding has to be brought forward. Gong Yimo looked at Shui Lian, then at her master, and finally at her own stomach. Zhao Fu said in confusion, it's not easy to build a city, and many people will die. If he really attacks, you should make a deal with him. Gong Yimo foolishly wiped her hands and touched her belly. Thinking of the regent's undisguised killing intent towards her, her expression became firm. If you really can't do it, you can just hand me over. Obviously, he cares more about me than the Snow Clan. I don't believe he would do anything to a pregnant woman. Shui Lian's nose twitched, but she glared at her. What nonsense are you talking about? He cares about you, but the Shui clan offended him. He won't let them off. Therefore, don't say such stupid things again. But, no buts. Shui Lian instantly became stern. Then, she got up and hurried away. Gong Yimo licked her fingers and said to Chiu Xingfeng in confusion. Why is she angry? I'm so selfless. Chiu Xingfeng was also confused. He blinked and put the fruit wine in front of Gong Yimo. She didn't seem angry. Instead, she seemed very touched. Did she? Yes, yes. Chiu Xingfeng said with certainty. Seeing her master so silly, Gong Yimo sighed. Master, I think it's better to have a boy. Why? Chiu Xingfeng looked at her belly. It seemed to be a little protruding. Gong Yimo licked the honey on her fingers and said bitterly. People say that girls look like their fathers. Chiu Xingfeng touched his face. Isn't it good to look like me? His face was serious. Senior and junior brothers all say in private that he only has an outstanding face. This means that they all think I'm good-looking. As he spoke, he nodded affirmatively. Gong Yimo couldn't help but laugh. It was just dawn. The morning light shone through the window and fell on Qiu Xingfeng. He was like a pure immortal that shouldn't exist in this world. She suddenly felt that it wasn't bad to look like him. A silly daughter seemed to be quite cute. It was warm here, but there were still dark clouds over there. And for the first time in his life, the Grand Regent felt troubled. If he continued to search for her, royal sister would still think that he was looking for her. But if he revoked the order, he was afraid that the little girl would run away without a trace. And she was by his side now. If he didn't find her quickly, what if she really got married to Qiu Xingfeng? Thinking that the idiot on Mount Yunding dared to touch his treasure. He wanted to cut the other party into 8 pieces to appease the hatred in his heart. He shouldn't have caught Qiu Zhongchan. He should have just blown up Mount Yunding. No. He couldn't wait anymore. He had to find the royal sister as soon as possible. But where was the royal sister hiding? Gong Dai's gaze fell on the map and hesitated. At this time, he didn't have the mood to care about the Lotus Kingdom. Anyway, it was there. And according to the spy's report, it was still taking people in. If it was really the Snow Clan's nest, then let it take them in. It wouldn't take much effort to catch them all in one go. As for the royal sister, was that night a coincidence or something? He felt that even if the royal sister had lost her memory, she shouldn't have anything to do with the Snow Clan. What happened last night should be a coincidence. But, what if it wasn't a coincidence? Thinking about the red wedding cloth he saw in the snow country that day. His eyebrows twitched uneasily. He shook his head and gave up on this idea. The royal sister wouldn't easily acknowledge her family, even if she had lost her memory. But he didn't know that Gong Yimo kept calling her mother. Mother. You are my mother. Can you let me go? Gong Yimo plucked the grass on her head with a look of disgust. Shui Lian was naturally happy to be called mother, but this was a custom. Even if she was her daughter, she couldn't break the rules. Good girl, this is the pregnancy grass. Every bride has to wear it on her head. This is the rule of the Snow Clan. Today was her daughter's big day. She couldn't wait for everything to be perfect. How could she allow Gong Yimo to be willful and break the rules? Gong Yimo looked at the green and yellow grass on her head. She couldn't accept it and plucked it all out. She proudly stuck out her belly. I'm already pregnant. There's no need for this ceremony. There's no need. Shui Lian was dissatisfied and wanted to use force. But Gong Yimo was no longer the weakling she used to be. She quickly hid behind a nanny and looked at Shui Lian accusingly. Do you not want to give me a dowry? You definitely don't want to give me a dowry and purposely used grass to fool me. She told her very seriously. If the Lotus Kingdom is very poor, I don't need a dowry. After all, she still had many good things in her space. This sentence almost made Shui Lian seethe with anger. How could she have such an unlucky daughter? Chapter 659. Although the time was short, she had prepared a lot of good things for her daughter. She didn't expect her to use this sentence to provoke her. Looking at Gong Yimo jumping around in her wedding dress, her attention was diverted. Be careful. The time was short and we only managed to make this wedding dress. The auspicious time is coming soon. If you ruin the dress, how will the prince consort come to fetch the bride? Gong Yimo made a face and then sat down like a lady. That's right, she was getting married today, but she didn't take it seriously. She thought it was fun. So this was marriage. After she married her teacher, there wouldn't be any difference. After all, there was only familial love and the love between teacher and disciple. It would never change. But since Shuel Yen insisted, she would satisfy her. These 2 days, the entire Lotus Kingdom was tense, but it passed by peacefully. Shuel Yen even had the misconception that the regent had let them go. Therefore, 2 days later, they welcomed such a celebration. Everyone laughed joyfully, feeling as if they had survived a disaster. Qiu Xingfeng was also dressed up. He really looked like a fairy child. At this moment, he was sitting in the house prepared by Shuel Yen. When the auspicious time arrived, he would go and fetch the bride. Because the Lotus Kingdom was really small, so anything that happened could cause the whole country to celebrate. The cheerful sound of gongs and drums could be heard even outside the city gate. Naturally, it quickly reached Gong Dai's ears. Celebration. What was the Lotus Kingdom celebrating? Gong Dai laughed at them for not knowing the difference between life and death. Fine, let them sing to their heart's content before they died. There would be no more chance if they died. In these 2 days, Gong Dai was looking for traces of the royal sister nearby while monitoring the situation in the Lotus Kingdom. He was more and more certain that this was the Snow Clan's nest, so he had sent people to surround the entrance and exit of the Lotus Kingdom to ensure that if anything happened, no one could escape. Moreover, he guessed that there was a secret passage in the Lotus Kingdom. To ensure that no one escaped, before he found the secret passage, he didn't want to alert the enemy. He didn't expect the other party to hold a celebration at this time. Gong Dai smiled and ignored him. But when he thought about what the royal sister had said, that she was getting married, he felt extremely uncomfortable. His eyelids twitched, and he had a bad premonition about this strange celebration in the Lotus Nation. After much consideration, he still decided to go to the Lotus Kingdom to take a look. He had thought it through clearly. If the royal sister was in the Lotus Kingdom, it would be fine. He had already sealed this place. If she was here, she would definitely not be able to escape. If the royal sister was not here. Let's do it today then. Since he was already there, he couldn't be bothered to wait any longer. He might as well destroy this place to vent his anger. The remaining members of the Snow Clan deserved to die. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he set off with his men. However, before they reached their destination, someone reported that there seemed to be a joyous occasion in the Lotus Nation city. His eyebrows twitched. It wasn't an event, but a wedding. The king of the Lotus Kingdom is marrying off his daughter in advance. The bad premonition became even stronger. Logically, he felt that the royal sister would not mix with the Snow Clan. However, his right eye kept twitching. His face darkened, and he unconsciously increased his speed. Now that the royal sister had lost her memory, it could not be judged by common sense. However, he had thought of many scenarios. Please, don't let it be the worst-case scenario. Unknowingly, Gong Dai and his men arrived at the entrance of the Lotus Kingdom. When the guards at the city gates saw the regent, they instantly lost their minds. They hurriedly went in to report. Gong Dai was not in a hurry. He just waited for the other party to come and welcome him. Shuel Yen heard the news that Gong Dai was here. It was like a bolt from the blue. Gong Yimo felt her legs go soft. She felt like running away. What should we do? He's not here to cause trouble, right? Gong Yimo grabbed her clothes nervously. Shuel Yen's expression was solemn as she exchanged glances with her husband. Fuya touched his chin and said, he shouldn't be here to make a move. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to take the risk. Then what is he here for? Shuel Yen did not welcome this person. She looked at the pale Gong Yimo. Could it be that he's really here to attend the ceremony? After all, the regent had said that he would attend the ceremony the last time he came. Fuya frowned. Perhaps he's here to test us. He shouldn't be sure of our identity, so he's using the wedding as an excuse to test us again. Xuelian felt that it made sense, but what about Immerse? Later, after Immerse pays her respects to her parents, she will be taken away by the prince consort. If we don't do these things, the other party will definitely be suspicious. However, if we don't do anything, what if the regent finds out? Fuya stared at Gong Yimo and said with some risk, the regent shouldn't be here for Immerse. After all, we haven't interacted with Immerse before. He has no reason to suspect that Immerse is here with us. Besides, doesn't Immerse have a veil? She doesn't need to show up to pay her respects to her parents or the gods. As for the prince consort, I'll find someone to disguise him. Is this feasible? Gong Yimo looked at the two people who had settled the matter with their words and said with some fear. Xuelian thought for a moment and said to Gong Yimo, only people who are very familiar with him can recognize him at a glance. Immerse, do you remember anything? Are you familiar with the regent? Gong Yimo shook her head decisively. She thought for a moment. She left the mountain at the age of 16, and now she didn't look old. Even if she had interacted with the regent in these 2 years, it shouldn't be deep. Seeing her shake her head, Xuelian heaved a sigh of relief. Then let's take a gamble. Gong Yimo heard this and her face turned even paler. Could it be that the regent was really coming to attend her wedding? No, she didn't want to get married, okay? Under that guy's strong pressure, if she gave herself away, wouldn't her blood splatter on the spot? I think he'll find out, even if they weren't familiar with each other. What if he was gifted? Could she really get away with it by just wearing a veil? Gong Yimo expressed her doubts. Seeing Gong Yimo's frightened expression, Xuelian couldn't help but comfort her. It's okay. When the time comes, you just have to lower your head. He won't find out. Also, you only need to show your face in front of him once. After all, if you don't show your face even once, he'll really be suspicious. Moreover, time was tight, and there seemed to be no other way. On the other side, Fuya had already stood up and said anxiously, Lian, stay here and comfort Immerse. I'll go welcome them. Xuelian frowned and said somewhat worriedly, husband, be careful. Fuya relaxed and smiled gently. Don't worry. Even if it's the regent, he won't casually kill people. Xuelian nodded and watched Fuya leave quickly. Gong Yimo was like an ant on a hot pan. Her entire person was going crazy. No. I still feel that it's not right. Gong Yimo paced back and forth. Finally, she revealed a delicate and pitiful look as she looked at Xuelian with a pair of big watery eyes. How about I don't get married? If the regent asks, you guys can just say that I was too happy and died suddenly. Chapter 660. Ba, ba, ba. Xuelian poked her harshly with her finger. It's a joyous occasion, why are you talking about death? As she spoke, she glanced at Gong Yimo's belly. Your belly is going to show soon. Do you want him to be less cared for than others when he's born? When she said this, the mother and daughter looked at each other and suddenly fell into a strange silence. Xuelian suddenly thought of the time when she left Gong Yimo behind. Gong Yimo also thought of this in hindsight and felt a little embarrassed. To be honest, she didn't care why Xuelian left. She didn't have it, so she didn't feel bad when she lost it. But Xuelian saw that she was silent and couldn't help but explain softly. I feel very guilty about what happened to you, so I don't want your child to be like this. She wanted to say something but stopped. Her pair of watery eyes, which were the same as Gong Yimo's, blinked, as if she didn't know where to start. Gong Yimo was afraid that she would be sad, so she pretended to be interested and said, Oh right, why did you fake your death to escape? Was it because you didn't like the emperor? Xuelian was even more embarrassed. She looked away and quickly said. No, at that time, I also liked Emperor Gong, but there were 30,000 beauties in the harem. He was willing to pamper me, but he wasn't willing to pamper me alone. I was very sad, and there were those annoying schemes. Speaking of this, she frowned with some disgust. So many women became twisted in their desires. I wasn't afraid of their schemes, but, one day, I got tired of it. Shui Lian saw that Gong Yimo was staring at her without blinking, as if she was listening to a story. She blinked and wanted to hear more. She sighed. The past that she didn't want to face, along with guilt, rushed to her heart. She knew that she was a selfish woman and could never be as selfless as her mother. So even if she cared about her, she was embarrassed to say it to Gong Yimo. She took a comb and combed Gong Yimo's hair. She didn't like praying vegetables, so she didn't wear them. Shui Lian tied her hair into a bun and inserted a beautiful hairpin. In the process of combing her hair, she seemed to have sorted out her thoughts. Looking at the unbelievably beautiful little woman in the mirror, her eyes warmed, and she softly talked about her past. Back then, I was as beautiful as you. Shui Lian smiled proudly. She was still very beautiful, but time was merciless. She had lost the tenderness of her youth and gained a mature charm. Originally, I also liked Gong Qing very much. I can see that he also likes me very much. But according to the order of arrival, there are already many people around him. He likes me the most, and I'm just one of them. She felt a little melancholy as she talked about this. She slowly combed her hair, as if she was not combing her hair, but the years. At first, I could tolerate it. I thought that as long as we were in love, nothing would matter. But as time went by, he had me, but he still had other women. The funny thing was that because I was the most favored, I was always envied and persecuted by others. I was a little sick of it. Some of those methods are very simple, while others are impossible to guard against. In this kind of scheming, I feel that I should leave him. Shui Lian inserted the hairpin into Gong Yimo's hair. Her expression was slightly gentle. I don't want to become like those women in a few years. They only have competition and no sincerity. So, I decided to leave while he still loves me, before this relationship has changed. It's just that he took care of me too well, so I could only choose to fake my death. She said with some shame, I'm sorry that I couldn't take you with me. It was impossible for her to take Gong Yimo away. Shui Lian sighed and took the veil over. Before she put it on, she saw that Gong Yimo was looking at her. She could not help but ask. You probably think that I'm very selfish. It's okay if you don't want to call me mother. Gong Yimo blinked. Perhaps it was because blood was thicker than water, but she actually felt her uneasiness, guilt, and anticipation. It was not that she did not feel guilty. With that thought, Gong Yimo smiled sweetly. I don't think you're wrong. Everyone is an individual. Why do you have to do things for me unconditionally just because you're my mother? At that time, you still tried your best to save my life. I'm already very grateful. Really? Gong Yimo spoke seriously, but Shui Lian almost couldn't help but cry. Her eyes were red as she pinched the veil and said faintly. You really don't have any resentment? Everyone else has a mother, but you don't. Shui Lian remembered the rumors about Gong Yimo over the years. She was strong and upright, but how did she grow from a helpless little girl to this point? Shui Lian never dared to delve into it. She just wanted to see Gong Yimo's glory, and that was enough. She didn't think that in her lifetime, she would see her daughter again, and it was when she had lost her memory. Could it be that the heavens gave her a chance to make it up to her? Shui Lian suddenly had a realization. Gong Yimo raised her brows slightly and said puzzledly, if there's no love, how can there be resentment? If I'm living a miserable life, I might blame you because of my anger. But I feel that I'm living quite well. Master was very good to her, and Yunding Mountain was quite interesting. Shuai Lian's heart ached, and she covered her with the veil with a wry smile. What a silly girl. You don't know how to coax me, can't you see that I'm very sad? Gong Yimo's eyes were covered by the red cloth. She shook her head and said briskly, a woman who could decisively abandon the emperor and escape by faking her death. Do you still need me to coax such a powerful woman? Shuai Lian was amused. She looked at Gong Yimo, who looked much more obedient under the veil, and a trace of determination flashed in her eyes. Don't talk later. Get married in peace. When the regent leaves, we'll move. Gong Yimo tilted her head. Why do we have to leave? Shuai Lian sighed. She also couldn't bear to leave this place that had been built for more than 10 years. Because it's no longer safe here, she didn't want to abandon or use her daughter, but she also wanted to protect her clansmen. Then, they could only move. Gong Yimo was a little regretful, but she still nodded. She trembled a little when she thought of bidding farewell to her parents under Gong Dai's nose. I'll try my best. After Gong Dai was welcomed in by Fuya, his eyes scanned the surroundings. He thought absent-mindedly, could the royal sister really be hiding here? After all, she had lost her memory, could she have forgotten her hatred for the Snow Clan? Gong Dai didn't know if she had forgotten everything or only remembered part of it. He frowned. He hated this kind of uncontrollable state. Fuya smiled apologetically at the side. Your Highness, we are honored by your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. When Gong Dai heard this, he coldly glanced at him and chuckled. City Lord is so insincere. This prince said that I wanted to attend the wedding banquet. City Lord, is having your daughter get married in advance? Are you guarding against this prince? Chapter 661. Gong Dai spoke very slowly, but it made Fuya's scalp tingle. The smile on his face froze because of the danger in his words. Fuya thought for a moment, then lowered his voice and forced a smile, speaking of which, this is also a family scandal. My daughter, she is pregnant. In order to cover it up, she had to get married early. The word pregnant made Gong Dai's pupils shrink. He thought of a possibility, but subconsciously rejected it. He asked in an inexplicable tone. I heard that this generation's custom is very interesting. When a princess marries, she must first pay her respects to her parents. Later, this prince should be able to see the bride, right? Fuya's heart jumped slightly. He forced a smile. Of course, it is my daughter's honor for the prince to visit the ceremony. Gong Dai smiled deeply and said no more. Initially, he had brought his men here to find out if there were any hidden entrances to the Lian kingdom. But now, all he could think about was the pregnant bride. Thinking of what the royal sister had said 2 days ago and so many coincidences, his smile finally became slightly sinister. He had been avoiding a certain thought because that thought made him want to kill someone. Royal sister, Momo. You're the best. It's not what I think. Fuya originally wanted to say something, but the sudden burst of cold air and pressure from Gong Dai's body made him tremble. His heart trembled as he thought that if they could really deal with it today, they would move the entire kingdom. The regent seemed to have locked onto them and was just short of killing them. The last bit of luck disappeared under Gong Dai's increasing murderous aura. It was more important to save their lives. The two of them walked towards the palace with different thoughts. In any case, it had been established for more than 10 years, and the palace was still in its initial stages. It was even more luxurious than Yi kingdoms, but compared to the 4 great kingdoms, it was very shabby. Gong Dai simply did not care about this. Lo Chi and the others saw that the prince did not follow the plan and ordered them to stay outside the palace. Although it was strange, they still followed the prince into the palace. The palace was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, but Gong Dai did not pay any attention to them. He was welcomed by Fuya to take the seat of honor. The entire process was somewhat rushed. The joyous day that was originally filled with smiles had turned into silence because of Gong Dai's arrival. Gong Dai stared at the palace maids coming and going, suppressing the murderous aura on his body. Occasionally, he would reply to Ya with a few words, but his tone was also cold. Even if he was in someone else's house, he still had that domineering look on his face. When he sat there with a cold face, the palace servants didn't dare to get too close. They often put down their things and left, not even daring to look at him. Gong Dai drank like this, enduring the inexplicable anxiety in his heart, waiting for something. Soon, the auspicious hour arrived. Under Gong Dai's strong pressure, the palace servants who shouted that the auspicious hour had arrived almost cried out. Because it was not a proper country, the palace servants of Lien country were not eunuchs. But at this time, their legs were shaking, and their voices were as shrill as eunuchs. Therefore, when she heard such a fearful voice, Gong Yimo's little heart trembled. She clutched her skirt tightly, and suddenly felt that this was a bad idea. Would she really not be discovered? If she could fish in troubled waters with a veil, then the Prince Regent would not be called the Prince Regent, but the knife was already on her neck. Whether she went out or not, it seemed that only death awaited her. At this time, she had a glimmer of hope in her heart. Maybe, the Prince Regent was not familiar with her. After all, only people who were very familiar with each other could recognize people from their body shape, right? She was not his lover, so maybe she could get away with it. Once he left, they would migrate the whole country, and from then on, the sky was high and the sea was wide, and they would never come back. Thinking of this, she carefully walked to the main hall, bid farewell to her parents, served tea, turned around, and left. Just a few minutes, she could do it. If she was discovered, what would happen? Unexpectedly, this terrible thought suddenly appeared in her mind. Gong Yimo was a little bewitched, and she walked in like a puppet. Fuya became more and more nervous because he felt that the Prince Regent's power was becoming more and more difficult to control. The entire main hall was covered in dark clouds, making it difficult for him to talk to the other party. At this time, a sudden realization flashed in Fuya's mind. Could it be that he and Lien were both wrong? The Prince Regent and Immerse did not have a falling out at all. In the Prince Regent's heart, Immerse was still his lover. All this time, Lien was afraid of poking Immerse's wound, so she had always avoided talking about the Prince Regent. Especially after Immerse came back crying from the Prince Regent's place last time, they did not ask about it. Immerse said that she already knew the whole story and decided to let go of her feelings for the Prince Regent, but, did Immerse know the whole story, or did she really remember everything? He suddenly felt that they seemed to have overlooked an important point. That was, could Immerse's words really be trusted? When Immerse appeared before, she was in a state of forgetting a lot of things. After she came back last time, she said that she knew everything. Did she really know? If what she knew was false, then wouldn't the conclusion that they inferred based on Immerse's words also be false? After all, if the Prince Regent really did not care about Immerse and they had a falling out, why was the notice not taken down after Immerse went to see him last time? Was the Prince Regent here to find out the truth, or did he suspect that Immerse was here and purely came for Immerse? Fuya nervously drank a mouthful of wine. If it was as he guessed, then he had to do something. If the Prince Regent still cared about Immerse, then if he found out that Immerse was married to someone else today, it would really bring disaster to the Snow family. Therefore, under Gong Dai's powerful pressure, Fuya suddenly shouted for the music to stop. The scattered and tuneless music was immediately cut off. No one cared if the joyous music was played like funeral music, but when the music stopped, Gong Dai's cold eyes fell on Fuya, making the others' sweat drop. Under the strange and oppressive silence, Gong Dai asked with a cold smile, "What does City Lord mean by this?" Fuya swallowed. He had lived for 40 years in vain, but he was actually forced to this point by a little brat. "Your Highness, it's like this lowly prince's daughter is naturally timid. When she meets someone like your Highness, I'm afraid she will be so scared that she will lose her composure. How about, let the madam comfort her first and give her a reminder." Fuya looked at Shui Lian and Shui Lian instantly understood. Her husband had suddenly changed his mind and did not want Immerse to appear. Although she didn't know why, she still quickly stood up and calculated in her heart. She might as well find a palace maid to replace her. At first, she didn't do this because where could she find a palace maid who was pregnant? But now, she couldn't care so much. Husband is right. My daughter is about to get married, so this concubine wants to say a few words. Saying this, she smiled apologetically at Gong Dai and prepared to stop Gong Yimo. Chapter 662. She also realized that the regent did not seem to have come for them, but had specifically come for Immerse. She suddenly felt uneasy. Did Immerse really cut off all ties with the regent? Why did she feel that everything was different from what Immerse had said? Seeing the husband and wife singing the same tune, Gong Dai smiled, but his hand heavily slammed the wine cup on the wooden table. Everyone present trembled when they heard the cold sound, even Shui Lian felt a chill run down her spine. Could it be that when this prince came in, your wife did not tell your daughter that this prince needed to make a special trip to inform her? Gong Dai's cold voice echoed in the main hall. The husband and wife looked at each other, but found that they could not say a single word of rebuttal. Or is your daughter really that weak? With this prince here, could it be that I could scare her to death? They did not know if Gong Yimo would be scared to death. In any case, they felt like they were being suppressed by something, even swallowing their saliva was difficult. Shui Lian wanted to say something, but she could not. She could only look at Fuya for help. Fuya's face darkened, and he displayed the dignity of a city lord. "Isn't your highness going too far? We just want to speak to our daughter. Do we need your highness's approval? Don't forget, Lian country is not a vassal state of Dai Yu state." Gong Yimo lowered her eyes and sneered at the carved white jade wine bottle. Then, she reached out and poured herself a cup of wine. "That's right, Lian country is not a vassal state of anyone. But if you don't know what's good for you, there's no need to wait until tonight. This prince can make this tiny place disappear right now." His words caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air. That domineering attitude of looking down on the world and his casual attitude actually made it impossible for anyone to say anything against him. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and took a sip of wine. In this tense atmosphere, he stared indifferently at Shui Lian. "Now, this prince will give you two choices. 1. Sit in your seats. After this prince watches the ceremony, this prince will leave. 2. Die." He said the word "die" coldly, as if the tens of thousands of people in the Lotus Kingdom were not worth mentioning. In his eyes, only those who complied would prosper and those who disobeyed would perish. Fuya clenched his fists tightly. He could feel Gong Dai's strength, but if he really waited for Immerse to arrive, he was afraid that she would really turn hostile. He had this premonition. In any case, Immerse's appearance meant death. Disobedience meant death. Fuya's hands trembled slightly. In the end, he made up his mind and made a gesture. Soon, the main hall was surrounded by people. The guards were all holding swords and were ready for battle. When Lo Chi saw that they were about to attack, he stood up with a cold face. However, Gong Dai ignored him and waited for him to continue. The boldness of such a strong martial artist made Fuya feel even more uncertain. Your Highness, please leave. The Lotus Kingdom does not welcome you. As he said that, everyone's swords drew closer. Facing the Prince Regent, facing this terrifying man who made the Snow Clan have no place to hide, everyone was filled with hate and fear. But in the end, they were more afraid than hate. After Gong Dai finished his cup of wine, he coldly swept his gaze over everyone. He smiled faintly. That sudden magnificence made the entire hall feel as if it had been lit up, and it also made everyone's hearts more and more flustered. They did not see him move, but there was a sudden chill. In his indifferent eyes, an endless chill invaded, and a trace of wind surged. How could there be wind in the main hall? Without waiting for everyone to recover, Gong Dai raised his hand slightly and then turned his palm. There were continuous screams. It turned out that everyone's swords were being sucked away by a powerful force. In the midst of the screams, a gust of wind suddenly surged in the main hall. The wind grew stronger and stronger. That terrifying force seemed to be able to tear everything apart. Whoosh! A sound that made people's hair stand on end was heard. The hundreds of swords were suspended in the air a meter in front of Gong Ju. Then, under some kind of terrible force, they were twisted into a tangled iron ball. Finally, they fiercely smashed into the stone surface of the main hall. That creaking sound was pervasive, deeply stimulating one's nerves. The gust of wind gradually stopped, and this move of his made everyone present tremble. Many palace servants even hid under the table. Just now, if he wanted to, he could have directly thrown these swords back, and everyone present would probably have died. How could he be so powerful? Fuya felt like he was about to collapse. He lay back and found that his back was completely soaked. Only then did he understand how terrifying the regent was. He did not even need to move, and he could dissolve all threats. No. He did not need to spend much effort, and he could make them die countless times. And they still wanted to make a move. The main hall filled with hundreds of people instantly became silent. Most people could not help but fall to their knees with a plop. This force had already exceeded the scope of humans. It was like a god that they could only look up to. Gong Dai tilted his head, and a somewhat cold voice rang out quietly. This prince is only here to observe the ceremony. There are too many people present. After he finished speaking, a terrifying pressure came. It was not as strong as the previous gust of wind, but it was cold and omnipresent. The palace guards who rushed in felt as if their hearts were being squeezed by something. Their limbs became numb and cold. Fuya and Xuelian gasped for breath under this substantial deterrence. Then, they watched as the palace guards scrambled to run out. Many palace servants also wanted to run, but Gong Dai chuckled. That laughter rang in their ears and sent chills down their spines. Those palace servants subconsciously stopped. They did not know why, but they all had a feeling that if they ran out, they would be killed on the spot. Gradually, the main hall cleared up, and that strange and terrifying murderous aura also receded like the tide. Fuya protected Xuelian and did not dare to move. Seeing that the main hall was already in a mess, he could not even say a word. The husband and wife looked at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes. They both had a premonition that if they angered the regent, today would be the day of the Lotus Kingdom's destruction. Gong Dai was also dissatisfied with the mess on the floor. Other than where he was, the other places looked as if they had been ransacked by a tornado. He was not happy to see it. Luo Xiaoqi could not help but say, "Why are you still in a daze? Hurry up and tidy up. Isn't your princess coming?" The palace servants seemed to have woken up from a dream and moved tentatively. When they saw that the regent was not looking at them, their hands and feet moved quickly. They cleaned up the main hall with godlike speed and replaced it with new tables and chairs. Everyone's hearts trembled. As long as this demon god could leave today, they would do anything he wanted. Play the music. 2 cold words rang out. Estimating the time, the princess should be arriving soon. It was unknown what he thought, but Gong Dai's smile was slightly sinister, with a strange evil aura. He smiled as he looked in the direction of the main hall's door. When they heard the regent say to play the music, the musicians instantly played and sang as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Chapter 663. Gong Dai felt that the murderous aura in his body was surging. The venting just now could not relieve the depression. He simply leaned back and leaned against the back of the chair. Pour the wine. Immediately, a palace servant came forward to pour the wine. Shuai Lian and Fuya had no other choice at this time. In the face of absolute power, the only thing they could do was to wait for the trial. Thus, in this extremely oppressive atmosphere, Gong Yimo, wearing a red dress, stood at the bottom of the hall. In front of her, there were 99 steps, and the regent was inside. Annoying, why is he haunting me like a ghost? Gong Yimo was surrounded by the palace servants as she walked up. Naturally, she did not see the expressions of the palace servants around her who wanted to say something but stopped. They always felt that if the princess went this time, they were afraid that the odds were against her. But at this time, who dared to say a word? Didn't you see that the regent said that he would leave after watching the ceremony? They only hoped that he was serious. 1 step, 2 steps, Gong Yimo felt that her heart was beating faster and faster, as if something was calling, or was stimulating her. Gong Dai also had this feeling. His eyes were getting colder and colder, staring at the door of the hole. His thin lips were pursed, and his hand was almost squeezing the bronze wine cup out of shape. Gong Yimo told herself over and over in her heart that she only needed to greet and then say goodbye. It just so happened that she knew ventriloquism, so it was not difficult to change her voice. Thinking of this, her heart relaxed a little, and then she pretended to be a shy and timid bride, walking up step by step. "The princess has arrived," the ceremonial officer shouted in a trembling voice. Gong Yimo felt that it was strange, but with the veil, she could not see the ceremonial officer's pale face. Shuai Lian silently shouted in her heart, "Mor. Don't come up." But at this time, she did not dare to say it. She could only hope that the regent really did not recognize her and then leave after watching the ceremony. Gong Dai relaxed a little at this time. He used a seemingly casual sitting position and stared at the door. But even if he tried to suppress it, that terrible evil aura was still faintly discernible, making the people in the hall feel as if they were sitting on pins and needles. They only hoped that time would pass faster, faster. 98, 99. Okay. They had arrived. Gong Yimo took a deep breath. She felt that her heart had jumped to her throat. She couldn't help but rub her stomach before walking in. The moment Gong Yimo's figure appeared at the entrance of the hall, everyone's breathing seemed to stop. Including Gong Dai. His eyes suddenly flashed with pain. Na Duo's emotions surged. After a few months, he finally saw his wife again. She was wearing a red wedding dress. The dress did not fit her well, causing her belly to protrude slightly. It had already been more than 3 months. Their child, the beautiful woman, was right in front of him, but Gong Ju didn't rush to her immediately. He was really afraid. He was afraid that she would disappear again and run away. He really couldn't bear to experience the pain of losing her again. Gong Yimo found it strange that no one said anything. However, the murderous aura in the air had completely disappeared. The moment she appeared, it was as if a ray of light had dispelled all the darkness. Shuai Lian couldn't help but say, "Child, come to mother." She stared at Gong Dai warily, but she realized that Gong Dai was only staring at Immerse. She didn't know if he recognized her, but the look in his eyes was complicated. The murderous aura had disappeared. Shuel Yen heaved a sigh of relief and looked at her daughter. Gong Yimo naturally followed her mother's advice and walked towards Shuel Yen. She was still very scared and flustered. Her little hands clutched her dress tightly, looking very helpless. Gong Dai saw everything. When he saw Gong Yimo walking directly towards Shuel Yen, he suddenly spoke. His tone was cold, but not cold. "Princess, please wait." Everyone looked as if they had seen a ghost. The regent was actually so gentle. Shuel Yen looked at her husband uneasily. She wasn't sure if the regent had recognized her. If they really didn't fall out and the regent knew that they were going to marry Gong Yimo to someone else, she didn't know how furious he would be. Gong Yimo stopped in her tracks. Her heart was in a dilemma. In the end, she slowly turned towards Gong Dai's direction. She used a voice that he wasn't familiar with and bowed timidly. "Greetings to the regent." Gong Dai suddenly laughed. He finally found his treasure. It wasn't a cold corpse, it wasn't a drunken dream, it wasn't a natural barrier, it was right in front of him. Thinking of how she jumped off the cliff without hesitation in order to not kill him, Gong Dai's smile became even more bitter. Seeing that her little hands were clutching her sleeves tightly, his tone couldn't help but soften again. However, his eyes continued to stare at her without blinking, as if he could never get enough of looking at her. No need for formalities. Only Lo Chi could hear how difficult it was to say the two words, "Your Highness." He couldn't help but look at the timid girl in front of him. Was this really the princess? Why did he feel that she didn't look like it? Gong Yimo waited for a long time, but Gong Dai didn't say anything else. She uneasily rubbed the corner of her clothes and couldn't help but ask. "Your Highness, do you have any orders?" Gong Dai laughed again. It was as if a heavy haze had been lifted. His laughter was like a blooming flower, like a snow mountain deity. Everyone present didn't feel afraid, but rather stunned. "It's nothing. You can continue. This prince will take his leave." As he spoke, he stood up with a smile and bowed to Fuya like a junior. Fuya turned pale with fright and quickly got up. On the other side, Gong Dai looked deeply at Gong Yimo. He gave a mysterious smile and turned to leave. He actually left. Gong Yimo was also stunned. Because she was too shocked, she forgot to dodge. Someone stepped on her skirt and she suddenly fell forward. Then, she was firmly supported by a pair of strong hands. Gong Dai fiercely glared at the subordinate who stepped on Gong Yimo's skirt. Then, he very gently helped Gong Yimo up. At that moment, the cold and domineering aura that belonged to Gong Dai was everywhere. Gong Yimo's face instantly turned red. She was somewhat helpless as she was helped up by the other party. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and unconsciously took a deep breath. Then, he smiled with satisfaction. "Be careful." Why did those two words sound so sexy when he said them in such a refined and deep voice? Gong Yimo stood up in a fluster, "So sorry." Gong Dai looked at her with satisfaction. "It's fine." Then, he reluctantly let go of her and strode away as if he had something urgent to do. After he left, everyone still didn't understand. Gong Yimo stood there, not knowing what to do. The place where Gong Dai touched burned. She patted her face and foolishly thought, the regent was so gentle to her because he didn't recognize her, right? Did that mean she had dodged a calamity? Chapter 664. Gong Dai left just like that, leaving everyone present in a daze. After a long time, everyone could not help but reveal an expression of having survived a disaster. Shulian even pulled Gong Yimo to look left and right. Just now, the regent helped her daughter up. Did he do anything? I'm fine. Gong Yimo lifted the veil and smiled happily. I feel like he didn't recognize me. Are we still leaving? Shulian said almost without hesitation, let's go. As she spoke, she patted her ample chest. We can't delay any longer. We have to move quickly. Otherwise, if the regent comes a few more times, I'll be scared to death. How can it be so exaggerated? Gong Yimo secretly smiled, but she still admitted it in her heart. The regent, the pressure he gave people was too strong. As long as he was there, even if he tried to restrain himself, he was still the most dazzling and impactful person in everyone's eyes. At this time, Fuya said in hindsight. Oh no. I forgot to send him off. Gong Yimo chuckled, he might have already left the palace. It's fine. He just helped me up. He doesn't seem like an unreasonable person. Fuya frowned and ordered a palace servant to go and take a look. If there's anything, let's talk about it later. I'll let the prince consort come and pick you up. Although, you're not as glorious as the princess of Dai Yu State. I'll still try my best to give you a complete wedding. We'll leave after you get married. As Fuya spoke, he glanced at his wife and then looked at Gong Yimo and smiled gently. Of course, whether you get married or not, you'll always be our princess. This time, Gong Yimo was really touched. She smiled sweetly and looked at Fuya, then, thank you, father. As she spoke, she looked at Shulian hesitantly. Also thank you, mother. When she shouted like this, the two laughed. They would not have children in their lifetime. They suddenly felt that having Gong Yimo as a daughter was not bad. But it was obvious that they were relieved too early. Did the regent really leave? Why did he leave? Not long after, the palace servant who had been sent out to check came back in a hurry. Oh no! The prince regent has gone to the prince consort's residence. Gong Yimo was stunned. Why was he looking for master? Fuya and Shulian shouted at the same time. Oh no! The regent must have recognized Mo. At this moment, Fuya suddenly thought of something and said to Gong Yimo in a serious tone. There's something I need to clarify. You have to tell me the whole story. Gong Yimo was anxious for her master, but when she heard Fuya's question, she endured her anxiety and looked at him. What happened? Seeing her confused face, Fuya couldn't help but soften his tone. How much do you remember about the past? Gong Yimo thought for a while. She seemed to be 18 or 19 years old now. She left the mountain at 16 years old. If that's the case, I basically remember everything before I was 16 years old. Fuya felt that it was strange. He always felt that if Imoa remembered what happened before she was 16 years old, there was no reason for her to be so afraid of the regent. Even if they had fallen out, he asked again, then in your heart, who is the regent? Isn't he the bad guy who chased after me? Gong Yimo frowned and said with some grievance, I'm sorry. Because of me, the regent took his anger out on the Snow Clan. I've dragged you down, what the hell was this? Fuya and Shulian felt that they couldn't understand. At this moment, they finally realized the root of the problem. Moa said that she remembered, but in fact, she didn't remember at all. Just as they wanted to investigate further, someone hurriedly came to report. King! There's fire! Someone blew open the city gate. The regent's people have killed their way in. Report. At the same time, another person hurriedly came. Not good. A large number of enemy troops have been discovered at the side and back door. We can't hold on anymore. This series of bad news made Shulian and the others forget that the regent went to find Qiu Xingfeng. What should they do? Was the regent going to slaughter the country? He had unknowingly surrounded the Lotus Kingdom. What should we do? At this moment, Shulian was at a loss. She looked at her husband and then looked at Gong Yimo. Suddenly, she made up her mind. You guys escape first. You guys escape through the tunnel. She hurriedly said, speaking of which, I still have a grudge against Gong Dai. If I tell him the truth about his mother's death, maybe I can delay him. How can that be? Fuya was the first to disagree. He glanced at Gong Yimo and frowned. I feel that things are not that simple. He might not be here to kill. We're all surrounded. Shulian didn't believe it. If the enemy wasn't here to kill, then what was he here for? Fuya looked at Gong Yimo and wanted to say something. At this moment, another person came. Report. The person who came was obviously very frightened. Prince, the bride's escort is here. The few people present were stunned. Didn't they say that the regent went to find the prince consort? How did the prince consort come so smoothly? Could it be that the prince consort defeated the regent and came to save the princess? Thinking of Qiu Xingfeng's innocent appearance, defeating the regent, this was really a bit unimaginable. The person didn't know. When he saw the escort team, he felt that it was a bit strange and ran over. So he didn't know what happened. Gong Yimo said, let's go out and take a look. That was the only way. Hopefully. Qiu Xingfeng really defeated the regent. The three of them walked out under the protection of the palace servants. When they were about to reach the palace gate, they actually heard the sound of gongs and drums. Strange. With the army here, the city should be in chaos. Why were there still sounds of gongs and drums? At this moment, a palace maid hurriedly came to report. When she saw Gong Yimo, her eyes lit up. She directly threw herself in front of Gong Yimo. Princess. Not good. Gong Yimo felt bad. Could it be that her master was also conquered by the regent? She couldn't help but ask, could it be that the prince consort is also dead? The palace maid was terrified. The prince consort is locked at home. The person wearing a wedding dress and coming to marry you is the regent. The princess was stunned. Oh my God. She couldn't live like this. Gong Yimo turned around and walked into the palace. But before she could leave, she was stopped by the palace maid. She said sadly, Princess. You can't leave. The regent said that if you don't appear at the auspicious time, 10 people will be killed in 15 minutes. He also said that it's a good chance to add some color to your big day. Gong Yimo didn't even turn her head. No matter how the palace maid dragged her feet, she didn't look back. No. I won't marry him. Let him kill me along with him. If he dies, it's just a scar the size of a bowl. What is he going to do? Death by 1,000 cuts. Hearing this, Fuya suddenly wanted to say, Mor, did you misunderstand something? Chapter 665. At this moment, the palace doors were suddenly opened. Countless people rushed in. They were not from the Lotus Kingdom, but Gong Dai's men. What was he doing? Forcing her to marry. Gong Yimo turned around and saw the figure that made her want to flee. At this time, Gong Ju had already changed into his wedding attire. Sitting high on the horse's back, he was so handsome and extraordinary, and his heroic spirit was overwhelming. Gong Yimo suddenly felt that it was normal for her to like him in the past. He had all the good qualities of a girl's dream lover. If only there was no enmity between them. Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo wanted to escape. He could not help but chuckle. The entire palace was surrounded by him. Not only that, he had also surrounded the entire Lotus Kingdom. Unless royal sister did not care about the lives of the people in the city. But she had already acknowledged the Lotus King and Queen as her parents. How could she not care about these damned Snow Clan people in the Lotus Kingdom? Gong Dai's cold eyes swept across Fuya and the rest. These people must have seen that royal sister had forgotten something and tricked her into staying in the Lotus Kingdom. Later, he would not let any of them off. Royal sister, come here. When he was high and mighty, the pressure he gave off was even heavier. Gong Yimo only felt fear. How could she still hear the gentleness in his voice? Seeing that Gong Yimo had stiffened with her back facing him, Gong Dai calmly softened his tone. Not coming here. Then how about killing these people who are in the way? Gong Yimo's eyes were teary. She turned around and looked at him accusingly. Shulian instinctively stood in front of Gong Yimo and said angrily, "You can do whatever you want to us. But Himo is pregnant. Can you let her go?" Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and looked at the woman in front of him. She had only been royal sister's mother for a little more than a month, but she was somewhat sincere. Speaking of which, that little thing really made people unable to not love her. "Royal sister," I said, "come here. Don't force my hand." That gloomy voice was like an electric shock that sent chills down Gong Yimo's spine all the way to the top of her head. She did not notice that the other party had said "I" and not "this king." Her heart was in turmoil. Should I pass or not? At such a close distance, it seemed like she wouldn't be able to escape. Even if she did, what would happen to her master? What about mother? She hesitated for a moment and finally clenched her fists. Forget it. A man should take responsibility for his own actions. Who told her to turn her love into hatred and kill the person she loved? If I die, then so be it. Gong Emo patted Shulian's shoulder and whispered, "Don't worry, Shulian. It's fine. I can't run away anyway. I'll go and meet him." As he spoke, he walked towards Gong Dai step by step. At this moment, her veil was long gone, and the face that he yearned for day and night finally appeared in front of him. It was so close and so clear. Gong Yimo's scalp went numb from his stare. Why was he looking at her with eyes that seemed to want to tear her apart and eat her up? Did he hate her that much? Once she thought of the regent's methods and the consequences of offending him, her originally determined steps became slower and slower. What should she do? She wanted to run away. But she couldn't run away. No. She couldn't be a coward. Gong Yimo rubbed her stomach and gained a bit of courage. Then, she walked to Gong Dai's side and raised her head, stubbornly looking at Gong Dai who was on horseback. She thought that her eyes were firm, but little did she know that even with Gong Dai's head lowered, he was about to be melted by her adorable look. Why was his baby so cute? He really lost all his temper when he saw her. In an instant, all of Gong Dai's anger disappeared the moment she approached. Just as he was about to carry Gong Yimo clutched her stomach and said awkwardly, "Regent, I already have a child. Can't you let me go?" Everyone's eyes couldn't help but focus on them. Gong Dai was wearing a wedding dress, and Gong Yimo was also wearing a wedding dress. One was sitting on a white horse with his head lowered, while the other was raising her head. This scene was unusually harmonious. If the two of them were husband and wife, they would really be a match. Gong Dai couldn't hold it in anymore and directly reached out to carry Gong Yimo onto his horse. "Ah! Help!" Gong Yimo couldn't hold it in and screamed in horror while clutching her stomach. Once she screamed, Shulian couldn't hold it in anymore. "Regent, let go of my daughter." She was just about to rush over, but she was pulled back by Fuya. He felt that the reality was different from what they imagined. "Let's look again." What else was there to look at? Shulian glared at her husband, but she saw that the regent was actually hugging her daughter intimately and smiling. That look, It was as if a rare treasure had been recovered. Did she see wrongly, or was the regent possessed by something strange? Gong Yimo also thought so at this moment. After she let out a soft cry, Gong Dai held her in his arms in a very gentle and absolutely domineering posture. He looked at her and actually smiled. She admitted that he looked very good when he smiled. It made her heart beat faster. But wasn't this scene a little too frightening? She was being hugged stiffly by him and surrounded by his strong aura. She was completely stunned. You, what are you doing? Gong Yimo stuttered decisively. Her snow-white face had a touch of red, and her eyes were watery and frightened as she looked at him. Gong Dai's Adam's apple bobbed. He suddenly felt that the feeling of being angered to death by her 2 days ago and wanting to beat her up had disappeared the moment he saw her. He only wanted to pamper her every day, pamper her every night. No matter how much he pampered her, it wasn't enough. Moreover, she had their child in her stomach. Seeing that Gong Dai was looking down, Gong Yimo quickly hugged her stomach with both hands. The child is innocent. Gong Dai was amused by her. He couldn't help but reveal his white and neat teeth. He reached out and gently pinched the little vixen's chin as she sat in his arms and looked up at him. He pretended to be cold as he said this. What if I want to touch him? Gong Yimo's face fell. He's only 2 months old, Gong Dai broke his facade. He smiled again and gently corrected her. It's 3 months old. Darling. The moment he said darling, Gong Yimo's body trembled. She immediately wanted to jump off the horse. But Gong Dai hugged her tightly. His hot breath continuously scattered on her neck because of his smile. In an instant, even her neck turned red. Her mind kept flashing with the soap operas she had watched in the past. Could it be that the regent had treated her as a substitute because she had killed the woman he loved? So he treated her as a substitute and started to have a sadistic relationship. No. She didn't want a sadistic relationship. She didn't want a deep relationship. Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo's eyes were spinning quickly and knew that she was up to no good. Her royal sister was good at everything, but her imagination was too wild and unrestrained, making people unable to keep up with her pace. You said last time that you don't like me anymore. Chapter 666. Gong Dai smiled, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced at her with a threatening gaze. She was so scared that she immediately became like a little rabbit. She put her little hands down and did not dare to move. Then she subconsciously shook her head, squeezed out a smile, and said flatteringly, No. Looking at you from a close distance. I feel that I still like you, feel. Gong Dai unhappily reached out and pinched her waist. Because of the itch, her body shrank into Gong Dai's arms as if she had been electrocuted. Suddenly, the two of them were even closer. She could even feel his scorching body temperature. No. It's not a feeling. Gong Yimo said weakly as she avoided his wolf claws. I still love you. I swear. Gong Dai was angry and wanted to laugh. But when he heard her say that, he could not help but say it. I love you too. Gong Yimo did not know what expression to use to face this crazy person. There were so many people around, palace servants, passers-by, mother, and godfather. Was it really okay for him to be like this? Shuai Lian was also nailed to the ground by this turn of events. She was a little confused about the situation. Seeing Gong Yimo in a daze, Gong Dai was a little dissatisfied. He held her chin and forced her to look at him. I said I love you, and this is how you respond to me. Then how should I respond? Gong Yimo widened her eyes and wanted to cry. The villain in her heart was already crying. What should she do? She felt that this regent was a crazy person, but she had no experience in dealing with crazy people. Gong Dai sighed slightly. His finger moved up and traced her lips little by little. A sense of possessiveness climbed up her spine, making Gong Yimo's spirit rise. She wanted to retreat, but her whole body was in the regent's arms. That kind of domineering aura made it impossible for her to escape. How should she respond? Was he not obvious enough? Gong Dai's arms tightened little by little. You still say that you are pregnant with someone else's child, and... A threatening made Gong Dai move even closer. Their breaths touched, and Gong Yimo's palms became wet. However, she couldn't lie. She nodded and said anxiously. What did you do to Master? Master. Gong Dai's eyes flashed with an unknown light. Gong Yimo hurriedly said, Master is my most important relative. You didn't do anything to him, right? Family. Gong Dai chuckled. He wanted to marry you and misled you, causing me to be unable to find you. Tell me, how should I punish him? His tone was gentle, but Gong Yimo could hear the undisguised murderous intent towards Qiu Xingfeng from his voice. You can't do this. He's my husband. Today is our big day, and this child. Before Gong Yimo could finish, her lips were pressed by Gong Dai's finger. At that moment, Gong Dai finally stopped smiling. His expression was cold and gloomy, as if a storm was coming. His other hand also let go of Gong Yimo. However, Gong Yimo didn't feel relieved. Instead, the feeling of fear became stronger. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and stared at her. Then, he stretched out his hand and loosened his high collar. He really felt that this little devil wouldn't stop until she angered him to death. She dared to say that she wanted to marry someone else in his arms. He wanted to teach her a lesson. However, he could see that she was so afraid of him. Her delicate and timid appearance made him unable to be ruthless and really angry at her. He really couldn't bear to hit or scold her. You want to save his life? Gong Dai tilted his head slightly. That suffocating pressure made Gong Yimo's face turn pale. But she still nodded. Unexpectedly, that kind of murderous intent became stronger. Gong Dai hooked his lips coldly. Kiss me. Ha! Gong Yimo thought that she misheard. However, Gong Dai felt that he had found a way to punish her. His eyes were glued to that tender red spot. His Adam's apple moved. He lowered his voice and told her. If you want him to live, kiss me obediently. The voice that was supposed to be joking was exceptionally low and hoarse. Gong Yimo covered her ears with hatred. That damn sexy voice made her hot all over. She didn't understand why. Did she like this man so much before? She couldn't resist when he got a little closer. But they were in public. How could she do such a thing? Gong Yimo thought that her mother and adoptive father were behind her. There were so many people, guards, and palace servants around. She felt ashamed. How could she be obedient? She wanted to jump off the horse, but Gong Dai easily hugged her with one hand. Gong Yimo was shocked to find that her strength couldn't move this man at all. How strong was he? Royal sister, if you want the child in your belly to be well, you'd better be obedient. Gong Dai pretended to scare her, but Gong Yimo really hugged her belly subconsciously and looked at him vigilantly. Her expression changed, but she didn't know that Gong Dai loved her lively eyes. His breath became uneven and his voice became hoarse. If you don't want Qiu Xingfeng to die, and don't want the people of the Lotus Kingdom to die, then be obedient. Gong Yimo blinked and looked at him with grievance. If I'm obedient, will you let us go? How could she have such a naive thought? Gongju couldn't help but move closer. As long as he moved a little closer, he would be able to suck on those crazy sweet lips. How would you know if you don't try? The deep male voice made Gong Yimo feel numb all over. Because of her pregnancy, her body became extremely sensitive. If this went on, her legs would be weak. Gong Dai stared at her calmly, watching the different expressions that flashed across her face like a color palette. Smelling the scent on her body, he suddenly felt patient enough to tease her mischievously. Just a kiss. After a long time, Gong Yimo tried to negotiate with him. Gong Dai raised his eyebrows slightly. Until I'm satisfied. How could that be? Gong Yimo bit her lower lip shyly. Although she had done everything with this man last time, that was when he was unconscious, and not when it was full of impact like now. Seeing her hesitation, Gong Dai laughed secretly, but his expression was dark and dangerous. It seems like you don't want to do this. No. If she didn't make him happy, everyone present would be dead. The regent, he had the entire Lotus Kingdom under his control. Gong Yimo thought to herself, anyway, they had done what they should do. In the past, she also wanted Changshi to like this man. Kiss. Kiss then. She leaned closer in Gong Dai's arms, gently grabbed his clothes with both hands, and looked up at him. Then. If you're satisfied, let them go. Gong Dai couldn't wait any longer. His eyes were fixed on her, and there were dark waves surging in his eyes. Seeing that Gong Dai didn't answer, Gong Yimo tried to ignore the fact that there were so many people around. She closed her eyes and gently kissed him. Chapter 667. When Gong Yimo's hot lips gently touched Gong Dai's cold thin lips, at that moment, the world seemed to have lost its voice. Gong Yimo's eyes suddenly widened. It was as if many images flashed past her eyes. They were all images of them kissing. They had already kissed many times. Then this man, but Gong Dai had already been unable to hold back. The moment she gave him a kiss, he hugged her tightly with both hands. He turned from passive to active. Gong Yimo originally wanted to stop after kissing him, but the other party's sudden passionate embrace and his entanglement as if he wanted to devour her made her afraid. She wanted to retreat, but so many images of Gong Dai flashed past in her mind. It was actually different from her previous memories. How could she have memories of 2 lifetimes? It was as if she had been reborn. While she was in a daze, she had already been completely taken over by Gong Dai. Gong Dai loved her sweet lips to death. Once he touched her lips, it was as if his understanding was instantly burned. He could finally confirm that his baby was still alive and was in his arms. She was alive and made him unable to stop himself from seducing her. He was too passionate and forceful, so Gong Yimo could only dodge and make a woo-woo sound. She felt as if she was going to melt. Finally, Gong Yimo pushed Gong Dai away. But it was undeniable that her body's passion had been ignited by Gong Dai's kiss. So much so that after she pushed Gong Dai away, she actually wanted to stick to him again. At this moment, her mind was in a mess. She thought about the sudden influx of memories and the fact that there were so many people around. She didn't dare to look around. Those obscure and hot gazes made her feel ashamed. She actually kissed Gong Dai on horseback in front of everyone. And it was on her wedding day. She didn't know what expression Shuai Lian, who was behind her, had. Everyone present was stunned, especially Shuai Lian. Gong Dai, that fellow, actually dared to take advantage of her daughter. Fuya pulled her back. Silly Lian, can't you tell? Fuya sighed softly. They are husband and wife. We all misunderstood. Their relationship is very good. Yes, very good. As a man, he could feel Gong Dai's fanaticism. Even at his age, he felt a little embarrassed just looking at it. How could you do this? Gong Yimo's face was as red as a tomato. She glared at Gong Dai in fear, shame, and anger. There were so many people around, how could he do that to her in front of everyone? At this moment, her chest was heaving up and down violently as if she was angry. However, she didn't know that after the kiss, the corners of her eyes were stained with a touch of peach color. She was so charming that Gong Dai couldn't wait to have her right there and then. But he couldn't. He could only kiss her even harder. To ease his longing and desire for the past 2 months. Gong Yimo still wanted to say something, but Gong Dai didn't say a word as he pulled her into his embrace and kissed her again. Gong Dai's subordinates saw their prince forcefully kiss the princess in front of everyone again. They gave a dry cough and turned their heads away in embarrassment. Who would have thought that such a cold and arrogant person, who was usually like a moving ice cube in front of them, would turn into a flame when he met the princess? Hearing other people's dry coughs, Gong Yimo was so embarrassed that she wished she could find a hole to hide in. But she couldn't. She was tightly hugged by Gong Dai as he held the back of her head and kissed her deeply again and again. Her lips and teeth were filled with his cold and passionate taste. If she moved a little, it would create even more intense sparks. A strange desire made her want to hug his neck and respond to him, but her reason told her that she couldn't be as crazy as the other party. Under the torment of both sides, she couldn't help crying. She didn't have time to clear her memories and she didn't know why she was crying. But when her tears fell, Gong Dai's long eyelashes moved and he opened his eyes. What a beautiful pair of eyes. They were like black jade that could suck away a person's soul. He seemed to be in a lot of pain and sadness. It was like a person who had walked in the darkness for a long time and she was his only source of light. Like this, did she still want to push him away? Gong Yimo couldn't help feeling a little dazed. She half closed her eyes and stared into his eyes. For some reason, she suddenly gave up resisting and even followed her heart. She opened her teeth and tangled with the other party. When her hands climbed up the other party's neck, Gong Yimo finally couldn't lie to herself anymore. She loved this man. Even if her body didn't have any memories, it would still instinctively love this man. Gong Yimo's initiative was like the fiercest sex. Gong Dai strangled her waist with one hand as if he was going to break it. His hand deeply penetrated her hair. Just when Gong Yimo was about to suffocate, he suddenly let go of her. He couldn't continue like this. He almost couldn't control himself. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. They all felt that if this continued, it might cause a mishap. But they didn't dare to move or make a sound. It was so awkward being forced to watch. Gong Yimo was in a daze. After she was let go, she gasped for breath and looked up at Gong Dai. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Gong Dai smiled. Gong Yimo, do you still want to marry Qiu Xingfeng? Gong Yimo was in a daze. Before she could recover, her chin was lifted by Gong Dai in the next second. In her daze, Gong Dai's devilishly handsome face became even more beautiful. That smile made her breath catch. This king is telling you, no matter how many times you wear wedding clothes, you can only marry this king. Gong Yimo was stunned by his sudden domineering aura. In her daze, she suddenly thought of her child. Child, fool, the child is also mine. Gong Dai gently kissed her red and swollen lips again as he informed her word by word. Also, everything of yours is mine. Your body, your child, and even your heart, they all belong to me. Gong Yimo's heart was beating fast. She suddenly shyly avoided his hand. What to do? She suddenly felt like she was going to fall in love with him again, then. Then in the past, she suddenly had a knot in her heart towards Gong Dai's ex-lover. Gong Dai hooked his lips into a smile. There is no past. Those are all your imagination. All of my past, only you. She imagined it. Gong Yimo looked up in a daze. Then. You didn't want to kill me. Gong Dai reached out to touch her head. The adoration in his eyes was almost overflowing. I don't even love you enough, how could I hurt you? It was you who left me, so I had no choice but to look for you all over the world. A trace of pain flashed through his eyes when he said this. But it didn't matter, it was all in the past. Then what is our relationship? Gong Yimo was confused. Gong Dai stepped forward with a smile and kissed her forehead. Silly girl, we are husband and wife. Chapter 668. Gong Yimo was confused. Combined with the images that flashed through her mind, what Prince Regent said was probably true. They were really husband and wife, and seemed to be childhood sweethearts. Then the child in her belly. Master clearly said that the child was his. Gong Yimo wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did Gong Dai say that the child was his? Regarding this point, Gong Dai had already asked Qiu Xingfeng before he came here. He remembered that Qiu Xingfeng told him that he saved the royal sister and then applied medicine on the royal sister, thinking that they would have a child after touching skin and being honest with each other. At first, Gong Dai wanted to dig out Qiu Xingfeng's eyes when he heard that he had seen the royal sister's body. But when he saw Qiu Xingfeng's innocent look, and that he had saved the royal sister and had been protecting her, he spared his life and tied him up at home. Silly girl, Qiu Xingfeng, he thought that after applying medicine on you, you would have a child. What? Gong Yimo was shocked. But then she thought that her master was still young and didn't understand many things. It was not impossible for there to be such a misunderstanding. So she swallowed the blood down silently. She was tricked by a silly girl. And it was more than once. Then is this child really yours? Gong Emo glanced at Gong Ju with some embarrassment. He said that the child was more than 3 months old. Then didn't that mean that they had? Gong Dai knew what she was thinking at first glance. He leaned over and whispered in her ear. Is this child mine? I'll help you remember later. Gong Yimo's whole body turned red instantly. She seemed to understand Gong Dai's teasing. Scary. She always thought that she was a little fresh. Gong Dai looked at her with a smile. With her in his arms, he finally felt at ease. But very quickly, his cold gaze landed on Shuel Yen, Fuya, and the others. It was these people who had harmed the royal sister and even deceived her when the royal sister had lost her memories. The Snow clan should have been wiped out long ago. Seeing Gong Dai glaring fiercely at Shuel Yen, Gong Yimo was a little puzzled. Although that increasing murderous aura was not directed at her, it still made her feel fear. The Prince Regent seemed to hate the Snow tribe. Royal sister, let's go. Gong Dai did not want to make a move in front of Gong Yimo, so he wanted to settle her down first. Gong Yimo was a little uneasy. What about mother and the rest? Gong Dai glanced at her and said gently, these people are not your relatives. They are all lying to you. The Snow clan had attacked you several times. The reason why I chased them was because they almost killed you. Gong Yimo was a little confused. Mother and the rest almost killed her. No. Shuel Yen suddenly stepped forward and said hurriedly, you lost your memories because of the Snow clan. But that's only part of the Snow clan. The Snow clan that mother brought back are all good people. Not all of them are bad people. She looked miserable. Seeing Gong Dai's cold expression, Gong Yimo did not know what to do. She looked at her mother and knelt down. Mother. Mo. Shui Lian interrupted her. Mother can guarantee that these people are not bad people. There are also good people in the Snow Clan. We just want to keep the name, keep the tradition, and live peacefully, Mother. Gong Yimo saw Shui Lian kneeling down and wanted to pull her up. Gong Dai held on to Gong Yimo tightly. He felt that this woman was good at playing the trick of injuring herself. She is not your mother. She is. Gong Yimo grabbed Gong Dai's arm and explained. She is Shui Lian. She faked her death. She is my mother. Hearing the name Shui Lian, Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and glanced at Shui Lian. Shui Lian lowered her head and knelt down. Fuya sighed and knelt down as well. Prince Regent, Lotus Country has been established for more than 10 years. We have always lived peacefully and have never participated in any disputes. Can't you just let us go? Gong Dai ignored them. Seeing that Gong Yimo wanted to plead for mercy, he said firmly. Royal sister, it was the Snow Clan who poisoned you. It was the Snow Clan who provoked you to go crazy during your wedding. You had no choice but to jump off the cliff with your child. I almost lost you and your child. His voice became colder and colder. He looked at Fuya and Shui Lian and said, only the extinction of the Snow Clan can appease my anger. Royal sister, if you don't want Shui Lian to die, she can live. But the others must die. Gong Yimo was anxious. At this time, her mother and godfather were kneeling on the ground. She could not help but defend herself. It is not family. Whoever did it, just let them pay the price. How can you exterminate the clan? At this time, the trembling Snow Clan people also kneeled down. A large group of people at the palace gate kneeled down. Please spare our lives, princess. We did not do anything bad. Please judge clearly. We just do not want to abandon our family name and inheritance. We do not have any rebellious thoughts, nor do we have any bad intentions. Many people were begging and pleading, humble and sincere. Gong Dai frowned impatiently. Under Lo Chi's order, all the guards unsheathed their swords. At this time, none of the commoners dared to speak. But their eyes fell on Gong Yimo. They all knew that the princess was their only salvation. Royal sister, Gong Dai looked at the Snow Clan indifferently. Don't be fooled by them. He looked around. Those people all lowered their heads. They did not dare to look at Gong Yimo. Gong Dai sneered. A dog that bites does not bark. These people look honest. Who knows when, they will stab you in the back. Gong Emo blinked awkwardly. She looked at Shui Lian's stubborn face and then at the helpless civilians. Her heart couldn't bear to see her like this. Gong Dai, don't I still have you? She gently bit her lower lip. Even if someone bullies me, don't I still have you? Gong Dai's cold eyes suddenly became gentle. He lowered his head to caress her face and said softly. Yes, you still have me. I will not let you fall into any danger. He looked up and smiled at Shui Lian and the rest. So, they must die. Anyone who poses a threat to royal sister's safety must die. Shui Lian and Fuya heard this and their hearts turned cold. Gong Yimo was stunned. She wanted to say something, but the murderous aura from Gong Dai's body suppressed her. Everyone present felt the coldness and trembled. The cold glint of the sword and saber made them all despair. Just as Gong Dai was about to give the order to kill, Gong Yimo suddenly held her stomach and wailed. Ah! It hurts. Gong Dai's expression changed. He hurriedly hugged her. What happened? Gong Yimo's forehead was covered with sweat. What do we do? It hurts. My child. Chapter 669. Seeing Gong Yimo sweating profusely, Gong Dai instantly panicked. He hugged Gong Yimo and disappeared like a gust of wind. Lo Chi sighed when he saw the prince carrying the princess towards the palace. He could see that the prince wanted to kill someone, but the princess did not agree. In the end, he would not be able to kill them. Lo Chi kept a straight face. He firmly believed that even if the prince became stronger, he would not change the fact that he was a slave to his wife. It was better that he did not go overboard with the people of the Lotus Kingdom. Thus, he ordered all the guards to stand guard outside the palace and personally helped Fuya and Shuelian up. Fuya asked worriedly when he saw that the one-armed man was an important subordinate of the Prince Regent. "Will the prince let us go?" Lo Chi did not expect the other party to ask him. At this time, Shuelian anxiously said, "The Snow Clan of the Lotus Kingdom are definitely not bad people. Can Lord help us plead for mercy?" Lo Chi pursed his lips and said when he remembered that this person was the princess's mother. "With the princess here, there is no need to worry." Fuya and Shuelian did not believe him. Although the Prince Regent seemed to have a good relationship with Immerse, would such a powerful and terrifying man listen to his own daughter? Lo Chi did not say much. Since the prince was not here, he had to preside over the situation. Under the situation where the entire Lotus Kingdom was sealed, the commoners did not dare to escape. Lo Chi told them to all return home, so they obediently went back and locked themselves in their houses, hoping that they could survive this calamity. Fuya saw that Lo Chi was very cold and did not want to talk to him. He supported his wife and also went into the palace. He did not know how Immerse was, why did her stomach suddenly hurt? But today's wedding was not going to happen. Gong Dai placed Gong Yimo on the bed and quickly called for a doctor to come over. The Lotus Kingdom's doctor rushed over without stopping. The moment he arrived at the princess's room, he felt the scalp tingling murderous aura. Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo's face was pale and his mind kept thinking, did Shuelian poison Mo? Did she use Mo to threaten him? If that was the case. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. Even if she was Mo's mother, she could only die. "Your Highness. I am the Lotus Kingdom's doctor. Get over here." Gong Dai did not have any good feelings towards the Snow Clan. The moment he spoke, his murderous aura almost made the old man who was hugging his medicine box. When he saw the regent occupying the bedside, he didn't dare to drive him away. He just cautiously asked for instructions and said that he wanted to take the pulse, the princes of Keeses, as the old. Finally, his legs went soft and he knelt by the bed. Only then did the Prince Regent place one of the little girl's hands in front of him. "Take her pulse properly." Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo was frowning in discomfort and was very angry. Why didn't he study medicine back then? Now that he was angry, his tone became even worse. "Nothing is allowed to happen to her. You should understand what I mean." "Understood. Understood." The doctor hurriedly took her pulse and removed all distracting thoughts. Even if his back was drenched in cold sweat, he did not notice it. At that moment, he felt that his medical skills had reached the peak. But why did he feel that there was nothing wrong with the princess's body? Under the pressure of the people around him, he carefully took her pulse again. Other than some inner breathing disorder, could he say that she was very healthy? The little girl in the old doctor's room was in tears. My husband. Gong Ju was originally staring at the seemingly useless doctor when he suddenly heard Gong Yimo's soft and tender voice calling out to him. Gong Ju was taken aback for a moment, then he glanced at Gong Emo with an ambiguous expression. What's wrong? Gong Emo was still a little scared. She shouldn't have called him wrongly. Anyway, the other party should not be wrong. She said pitifully. I want to drink water. Then do you feel better? Gong Dai's voice became more and more gentle. Yes. Much better. Gong Emo was still not used to his gentleness. Although there were many fragments of memories in her mind, she did not have time to sort them out. Gong Dai directly leaned forward in front of the doctor and planted a kiss on her forehead. Wait a moment, I'll go get you some water. Gong Emo nodded nervously. Seeing him smile inexplicably and leave, she let out a long sigh of relief. At this time, the doctor who was pretending to be invisible next to her had a difficult expression and said softly. Princess, where are you feeling unwell? This humble one is ignorant. He couldn't tell. Gong Emo's eyes were fixed on the door. After confirming that Gong Dai had gone to get water, she stuck out her tongue and quickly said. No. I was lying to him. The doctor was shocked. He suddenly felt that the little girl on the bed was simply a warrior. She even dared to lie to the regent. Even if the regent liked the princess was too daring. Then, what should this humble one say to the prince? He had a difficult expression. Gong Emo's eyes turned. While vigilantly staring at the door, her small mouth quickly said. Just say that my illness is very serious and can't be stimulated. So if the regent cared about her words, he had to listen to her and follow her wishes. Waha! The doctor wanted to say something but stopped. Was this really okay? Gong Emo's face was firm. Anyway, just say how delicate I am. Please don't be stingy and describe me as a delicate flower. Thinking of something, she added softly, also, you must tell him that with my current condition. I can't have sex. The doctor touched his beard and was a little embarrassed. Actually, it's fine. When he checked her pulse earlier, he found that her pulse was deep and strong. It should be 3 months. Gong Emo's face was serious. No. You must tell him no. She was not ready yet. It was only her 3rd time meeting the regent. Gong Dai was at the door, the cup was about to break. Every time the royal sister was scheming, her little mouth was especially sweet. When he heard her call him hubby, he knew that there was a trap. Sure enough. This little vixen. She actually wanted to lie to him and not allow him to exercise his rights as a husband. Gong Dai's eyes flashed and he walked in. Seeing Gong Dai walk in, Gong Emo instantly acted delicate and timid as she looked at Gong Dai. His aura was too strong. She was not pretending to be afraid. The doctor was also suppressed by the faintly discernible aura of the regent. After mulling over it several times in his heart, he did not say what the princess wanted him to say. Gong Emo reached out to take the cup of water from Gong Dai's hand while looking at the doctor. However, the other party was like a mute and did not speak no matter what. Gong Dai laughed inwardly. He raised his hand to prevent Gong Emo from reaching the cup and then waved at the conflicted doctor. You can leave. Chapter 670. Gong Emo was anxious. She didn't have time to pretend to be a delicate flower. She hurriedly said, he hasn't. Seeing Gong Dai suddenly look over, Gong Emo grabbed the quilt and swallowed her saliva. She said softly, he hasn't said anything about my situation yet. A smile flashed through Gong Dai's eyes, but his face was still serious. His ability is too weak. Let me check for you. Gong Emo was frightened. You also know medicine. Gong Dai smiled. How would you know if you don't try? The doctor saw that he couldn't interrupt and hurriedly packed up his things and left. But he couldn't disobey Gong Yimo's order. So before he left, he braced himself and said, "Your Highness. Princess. Her body is delicate. I'm afraid she can't sleep for a while." Gong Yimo hurriedly, weakly, coughed a few times. Gong Dai squeezed the cup and narrowed his eyes. "You can leave." It wasn't known if the regent heard it. The doctor sighed secretly and left in a hurry, ignoring Gong Yimo's pleading eyes. "Everyone, leave." Gong Dai ordered, and his people who were guarding outside all retreated. The entire exquisite palace was only left with Gong Yimo and Gong Dai. Danger. Wouldn't no one hear her even if she screamed herself hoarse? This sentence flashed through Gong Yimo's mind. Then she looked at Gong Dai and stammered. I want to drink water." She wanted to drink a glass of water to calm down. Gong Dai slowly walked in front of her. The wooden decoration and his gorgeous black robe formed an exquisite antique painting. His silver-gray hair gave him a kind of unreal beauty. His dark jade-like eyes were cold, but they contained emotions that she couldn't understand. His fair fingers held the celadone teacup. As Gong Yimo watched him walk closer, she suddenly felt thirsty. Gong Yimo avoided the hand that was about to take the cup and brought it directly to her mouth. Due to the inexplicable tension in the air, Gong Yimo did not go against him and took a sip from his hand. But just as she licked her lips and was about to take a second sip, the cup was taken away and he sat in front of her. The sudden strong aura made Gong Yimo shrink back. Gong Dai smiled. "Do you still want to drink?" Following his chuckle, it was as if something had changed. The entire bed was filled with his unique and elegant voice. The weather was already very cold, but at this moment, the entire room was as hot as summer. She licked her lips again as if she was getting thirstier. I still want to drink." When Gong Dai saw her licking her lips, his eyes darkened. There was no light in his eyes, but they were filled with danger. Seeing Gong Dai walk closer, Gong Yimo could not help but say, I'll do it myself." Gong Dai chuckled. "Your stomach doesn't hurt anymore." Gong Yimo was shocked. "It hurts." Gong Dai's smile widened. When a person who did not smile often suddenly smiled, the impact was off the charts. Gong Yimo's little heart started to beat uncontrollably again. "You seem to be very weak." Gong Yimo nodded subconsciously. "I feel uncomfortable all over, so uncomfortable." "You'd better not bully me," cough cough, she was trying to gain his pity. How could she be so cute? Gong Dai looked at her mischievous behavior and felt as if he had returned to their childhood. Back then, she was also like this, using all sorts of methods to make him fall in love with her. Gong Dai could not hold it in any longer. He drank a mouthful of water and leaned forward, pressing his lips against hers. Gong Yimo widened her eyes and tried to push him away with both hands, but how could she push him away? As she was not prepared beforehand, she spilled more water and her face was as red as a prawn. Because the moment Gong Dai leaned forward, she subconsciously held her breath. Her ears were filled with the sound of her thunderous heartbeat. Thump. Thump. What should she do? She felt that she was about to fall in love with this man. How could he be so good-looking? His actions were so domineering, but why did she not feel disgusted at all? Could it be that she was obsessed with looks? Gong Dai saw that she was not breathing and could not help but laugh out loud. He used his hand to scratch her nose. Little fool, breathe. Gong Yimo subconsciously gasped for breath. But it was filled with his scent. That cold scent. Oh no, oh no. She felt even dizzier. What was going on? Gong Dai laughed and teased her. Do you still want to drink? Gong Yimo shook her head like a rattledrum. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. What should I do? You're not thirsty, but I am. Gong Yimo subconsciously tugged at the little blanket. Her face was red as she looked at him warily. How adorable! Gong Dai could not help but caress her face and tease her. How about you feed me like how I feed you? Feed him mouth to mouth. Gong Yimo widened her eyes and shook her head again. I don't have any strength. My stomach hurts. No, she blinked her watery eyes, but she did not dare to look at him. Gong Dai chuckled. Don't have any strength. If not for the fact that his martial arts skills were much higher than hers, she would have definitely pushed him away and run away. As he thought of this, he lowered his gaze and smiled faintly. Since you don't have any strength, let me serve you, royal sister. As he spoke, he held his saliva in his mouth and tried to feed her. This time, Gong Yimo was prepared. She wanted to avoid him, but with his domineering personality, if she disobeyed him, she would definitely be treated even more harshly. Gong Yimo was conflicted. Thinking of the many people outside who were waiting for her to plead for mercy, she made up her mind. She closed her eyes and obediently allowed him to feed her. Gong Dai was satisfied with her docility. He gently pressed his lips against hers. The soft sound of water and swallowing filled the air. It was so ambiguous that it made one's scalp tingle. Gong Yimo felt as though she had become a fish on the chopping board. She could only breathe by clinging on to him. Hence, she grabbed his collar tightly and sucked the water that he passed to her in small mouthfuls. However, it did not feel like water, but wine. It made her feel as though her entire body was burning. Her limbs were really weak. What should she do? Her heart felt as though it was about to jump out. The images of the two of them flashed in her mind again. They were all intimate moments. She was deeply immersed in them and could not extricate herself. It was as though there was a fire burning fiercely in her body. Gong Dai looked at the sweet little woman in front of him with half-opened eyes. The ecstasy of regaining what he had lost, and the love that he could not extricate himself from, had all turned into lust. He could not help but kiss her for quite a while after feeding her water. Only when both of their breathing became disordered did he let go of her while panting slightly. Are you still thirsty? His voice was even more sexy because of his emotions. These few words made Gong Yimo's entire body go numb. It was as though she had been electrocuted. She was like a little kitten being pressed down by Gong Dai. Her face was red and she did not dare to resist. This only made him want to bully her even more. Gong Yimo bit her lips. Suddenly, she was a little unhappy. You can't bully me like this. It made her heart beat uncontrollably. She felt as though she was going to die from lack of oxygen. Gong Dai laughed and pinched her face. Then how do you want me to bully you? Chapter 671. Gong Yimo looked at him accusingly. She hoped that he would not bully her all the time. She felt that she had become extremely strange in front of him. Gong Dai's left hand was holding the cup steadily. He glanced at it and saw that there was still a little left. Drink it all. Gong Yimo was firm this time. She suddenly snatched the shallow cup and said forcefully, I'll drink it myself. Gong Ju sat up, no longer pressing down on her, and said in a calm voice. Okay, drink it yourself. But, if there's a drop left, royal sister, I will be angry. Gong Yimo shrank back. Not only did she quickly finish the rest of the water, she hesitated for a moment and licked her lips to ensure that there was not a drop left. She did not know that her actions were simply playing with fire. But it didn't matter. Gong Dai's Adam's apple bobbed as he calmed himself down. There was still a lot of time. He had enough time to catch up. Great, now that she had finished drinking the water, it was time to talk about serious matters, right? But what serious matters were they talking about on the bed? Gong Yimo sat up a little and tried to distance herself from this aggressive man. Well, I hope that you won't kill the people from Lotus Country. The ambiguous atmosphere seemed to have suddenly become dangerous. Gong Ju sat up straight and looked at her as he spoke. Come here. Why was she so far away from him? Gong Yimo did not want to go over, but she still had to plead with him. She was in a dilemma. It was better for her to be obedient. Moreover, it was broad daylight and there were so many people waiting outside. At most, he would take advantage of her. He would not be serious, right? With this kind of wishful thinking, she leaned over bit by bit. Finally, she suddenly thought that since they were husband and wife, she seemed to like this man a little. She might as well use her beauty to trap him. She could not let him take advantage of her for nothing. Therefore, she, who was originally very unwilling, suddenly gave him a bear hug. What she did not know was how much she wanted to be close to him. Gong Dai was afraid that she would fall, so he quickly pulled her into his arms. In the end, Gong Yimo sat on top of him in an ambiguous position. The moment she sat on top of him, Gong Yimo regretted it. Because something was fiercely poking at her. The memory of what had happened to Gong Dai after he got drunk was still fresh in his mind. Her facial expression changed for a moment. Just as she was about to retreat, she was hugged by Gong Dai. His beloved little wife threw herself into his arms. If he let her slip away, would he still be a man? In order to divert her attention, Gong Dai chuckled. Royal sister, why do you want to let the Snow Clan of the Lotus Kingdom go? Gong Yimo's face was burning red. At this moment, she couldn't sit down, nor could she leave. She could only kneel and not let her body touch the other party. Only then would she feel less awkward. However, Gong Dai was so domineering that he forced her to sit down. In the end, they intimately pressed against each other. Both of their breaths were in disorder. I think that there are good people among them. Gong Yimo said with a red face. Her body moved slightly, trying not to think about the fact that the two of them were so close to each other. It was fine if she didn't move. The moment she moved, the entire atmosphere seemed to freeze. Gong Dai's Adam's apple bobbed. That's because you lost part of your memory. He enjoyed the other party's body and said with certainty, Baby, you haven't told me what else you remember. As for the fact that Gong Yimo dared to forget about him, Gong Dai said that he would definitely settle the score with her in the future. Gong Yimo's thoughts were led astray by him. She raised her head and looked at Gong Dai. She deliberated and said, I actually remember some things, and I also remember you, although it wasn't much, but she felt that her memory was quickly reorganizing. It wouldn't be long before she could remember everything. Oh. Gong Dai was pleasantly surprised. Remember what about me? Speaking of this, Gong Yimo was so embarrassed that she wanted to cover her face. Could she say that she remembered all the intimate parts between the two of them? Moreover, she only remembered the intimate parts. You. Don't change the topic. You haven't said if you can let them go. With a warm and fragrant jade in his arms, who would want to think about those annoying people? Gong Dai hugged his beloved little person and lowered his head to tease her. We'll talk about it later. I'm more interested in the fact that you remember me. Gong Yimo saw that he didn't change his mind and still wanted to deal with Lianghua. She couldn't help but move forward and give him a loud kiss on the cheek. Look, I'm here, eating and drinking well. They've raised your wife and child well, and you still want to kill them. Gong Dai was surprised that she was so proactive. He didn't expect that she still had a favor to ask of him. He couldn't help but grit his teeth. Yes, they're even preparing to marry my wife and child to someone else. Gong Yimo lowered her head. Then isn't that a misunderstanding? It's all Master's fault. She really believed that the child in her womb was Master's. Gong Dai was still very angry. If he had come a little later today, wouldn't she have to marry someone else? Seeing that Gong Dai's face had turned cold, Gong Yimo hurriedly gave him 2 more kisses and acted coquettishly. All right. I've already begged you. If you don't listen, then I'll ignore you. This little fellow actually dared to threaten him. He still hadn't settled the score with her for the incident at the cliff. Therefore, he lightly spanked Gong Yimo's butt twice. As a warning. Seeing that he refused to budge, Gong Yimo was also unhappy. She was kissed, hugged, and even acted coquettishly. He actually didn't listen. He even hit her. She was really blind in the past. She actually married such a disobedient man. He didn't dote on his wife at all. Gong Yimo's direct reaction to her dissatisfaction was to get down. She didn't want to sit on him and continue to let him take advantage of her. Let me go. I want to get down. Anyway, you won't agree no matter what I say. You just don't love me. This crime was too serious. Gong Dai hugged his little wife tightly and said with a headache. Those Shui clan people all have ulterior motives. If you don't remove the root of the problem, there will be endless trouble. Gong Yimo felt that how could they all be bad people? Wasn't this the same as overturning a boat with a pole? Therefore, her face darkened and she crawled to the side. Gong Dai went to pull her, but when he pulled, Gong Yimo's necklace and the black ring were revealed. This ring was originally a pair, and the other ring was on his own hand. Seeing that Gong Dai was staring at her wrist in a daze, Gong Yimo took a look and put her hand behind her back in shock. Her eyes drifted. Scary. Why didn't she keep this necklace in her space? If Gong Dai saw this, would he remember that she was the one who took advantage of him when he was drunk and ate him clean and then ran away? Gong Dai hugged her back again, this time hugging her very tightly. The heat was enough to melt the little vixen in his arms, and the little vixen finally knew that she had done something wrong and became very obedient. Gong Dai's lips curled up slightly, and his handsome face suddenly moved closer. Gong Yimo could clearly see the danger in his dark eyes. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.